I'm talking only about our country's children. If we're to break that down and what it means, it's that you have 1,472 child rape cases in this country per month. Those are children that are being violated in schools, as we've recently experienced. They are being violated in homes. They're being violated in the street when they're playing. How many times have we reported on stories of children who are playing and were basically lured off the street by some of these suspects? And that is how serious the rape crisis that we have in this country. And the Eastern Cape alone had 45.9% of all reported crimes against children were rapes in that province alone. And it's little girls and it's little boys that are at risk. What are we doing about it as a country? What are we doing about it? And this is not the moment to say, well, what is government doing about it? No, because the people who rape children are the people in our homes. The people who rape children are the people in our schools. They're the people in our friend groups. They're the people in our drinking clubs, if you have a drinking club. They're the people in our churches. That's where rapists are. They don't live somewhere isolated from society. No. They are with us every single day. And sometimes we know, but we choose to do nothing. In fact, even worse than doing nothing is protecting. We choose to protect those that are behind these violations. So what, as a country, are we going to do about the rape crisis involving minors, involving children? Because when it comes to women, that conversation is often disregarded, right? And those who don't want to take responsibility or accountability ask questions like, oh, what did she do? There must be something she has done to deserve it. So now that it involves children, is there ever a scenario where rape against a child can in any way be justified? It can't be justified against an adult as well. But I'm saying, what reasons do we have now? What is the counter debate now to why it is that we are violating our own children to such a deep extent? We can have that conversation on 086 000 2032. That's the number to dial, 086 000 2032. On the WhatsApp voice note line, 0614 104 107. So coming up on the show in the second hour, we're going to be looking at the land issue. Contra Lesa has called for a referendum to deal with the land issue. We'll find out exactly what it is that they want to see happen in the second hour of the show. We've also invited some experts on this issue of land to join us for that conversation. And then the final hour of the show will look at the budget vote 2025. What will it take to get it passed? That will be the conversation for the final hour. And of course, we have to review the risks, right? So what happens? What happens if come Wednesday there really is no clear agreement? What are the risks that are inherent in that? And of course, you're more than welcome to raise whatever matter of national interest that you want to put on the national round table. Let's have the conversation after this.
Whether it is a CCMA referral, problems with a mechanic, or unfair blacklisting, Clientele legal plans are affordable, and you receive up to 670,000 rands worth of legal services per year. We cover civil, criminal, and labor-related matters. Our legal team will be your support 24 hours a day. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195. Clientele General is an authorized FSP and a licensed non-life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
From the shows that bring us laughter to the moments that inspire us, your SABC TV license makes it all possible. Every license paid supports local stories, top talent, and the programs that unite South Africa. Pay your TV license today. Visit tvlic.co.za or your nearest retail outlet. Your screen, your story. Together, we make it happen.
Akwele.
Akwele.
Akweli.
Akwela.
Akwele.
Akwili.
Akwele.
No matter how you say it, one thing's for sure. Akwele is South Africa's most loved water brand, refreshing you with pure natural spring water and delicious flavored sparkling drinks. From every sip to every smile, thank you Mzansi for making Akwele a part of your everyday moments. Akwele, spreading joy to South Africa naturally.
SASSA Gold Card beneficiaries can still come and collect their new Postbank Black Card. Avoid the risk of not receiving your grant. Join over 1.3 million beneficiaries that are already conveniently receiving their grant using the Postbank Black Card. There are multiple selected outlets nationwide where you can swap your SASSA Gold Card for the new Postbank Black Card. Dial *120 *355 hash to find one near you. Standard rates apply. Postbank, your bank.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
All right, you're listening to The Talking Point. Let's get straight into the open line, our national round table. Let me start off in Mbombela this morning. Kujo, good morning.
Good morning to your listeners and you as well. I want to comment about the child rape issue. Remember, in 2010, when the World Cup came to South Africa, there were courts which were designed for anyone who was going to do crime around that time. I think now, because we are having this rate of rape, why don't the Justice Department open courts which will specify for that? Which I believe they will set an example, because you can't rape a 7-year-old and want to justify that you saw something in the child. And the most painful thing is that they even do this to young boys. So according to me, I'm thinking if we can open courts which will be specifically for this, so that the justice system can be, the process must be quick. People must be sentenced very quick, rather than the person will need to wait for 2 years. They say there's a reminder. I think the Justice Department needs to send a very, very important message to the public. That's what I believe in. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Kujo, that's a very important point, because one of the biggest issues has been around being able to access justice. But even when that happens, right, if you look at, again, the figures out of the report that the Teddy Bear Foundation conducted, out of 5,000 cases that were reported in the country, or rather that went before the courts, the conviction rate there was only 4%. And so that also points to a bigger problem within the criminal justice system. And you have the activists saying, we are actually at a point now where we don't know if it's more harmful for minors to be going through these court processes than not. Because in the end, there is an inability to actually secure the justice that they need.
I do understand you very well on that. But I think our justice system, I think there are many aspects of the justice system which we are lacking, because if a person can have rights while we have proof that here's the proof that the person has committed the crime, and then someone will say that the person has right of whatever not to be prosecuted. I think there's a problem there, because this thing of copying other countries' laws, like South Africa, we can see that South Africa is copying the U.S. laws in every aspect, because a criminal can have more rights than the victim. You understand that? So I think we need to work around that, and then we need to have this thing that people need to have Ubuntu, especially the lawyers of the perpetrators. Because you can't take out a person out of jail who has raped a 7-year-old, a 3-month-old baby. It's wrong.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that call. In fact, as you say that, you remind me of a statement that was issued by the Correctional Services Minister, and he was speaking about the high levels of recidivism that are being experienced, and that's really repeat offenders. These are parolees who are let out but are continuing to commit further offenses. And many of these crimes include rape, robbery, murder, and culpable homicide. Parolees in that category, at least 30% of them that were studied in the Cape Flats between 2024 and 2025 had repeated those crimes. And it speaks to your point, Kujo, about what happens when we release people back out into society, that they just commit those crimes again. Is it Chuma? You're in Cape Town. Good morning.
How are you?
I'm well, Chuma. Go for it.
Yeah, I'm going to speak about the matter of the crime and rape among the children. Can you hear me?
Yes, Chuma.
Yeah, I heard you saying that we shouldn't blame the government. I think the government is playing a big role in creating crime in South Africa. For example, there's quite a number of the guys which I know, like personally know, which were arrested for rape. They didn't even stay in prison for even 5 years. It was long, and then they were out. We are living with them now. I know them. I'm not talking about the story that I heard on TV. So the government is playing a big role in creating crime in South Africa, because these guys, they get arrested. After 3 years, they are out. That's why they continue raping again. Because the government is failing us. Because there should be a tough law. You see, if even in prison, you see the prisoners, they have phones, they have rights. For example, the thing that happened in Lusikisiki, where they killed a lot of people there, the person who created that thing was in prison. We all know that. He sent the messages over the phone. How can a prisoner have a phone? You see, nobody is talking about that. That the government is also creating the crime in South Africa. I don't know, maybe they are benefiting or something. Because that guy was in prison. He sent a message on Facebook to those guys who killed those people there in Lusikisiki while in prison. So imagine if the law can be tough in the people who are in prison, everyone will be scared to go to jail. But now they are living freely, they have Wi-Fi, they have phones. So I blame the government too.
Look, Chuma, you're making a good point about the role of the criminal justice system, because as long as there isn't a sense of true accountability, then in as far as mitigating those levels of violence, because the courts must show that these are serious crimes. And over the last couple of years, we've even had magistrates. Some of their cases have had to be reviewed because they were simply too lenient when it came to the sentences that they had given to rapists.
Yes, because the rape maximum years is 15 years. And one of the things that I think people of South Africa don't understand, when you're talking about 15 years, you're not talking about 15 years, you're talking about 7 years and 6 months, because they're saying they're going to put you to correction, they are correcting you. There's nothing to correct in someone who rapes someone. That person must rot in jail, because this thing that we are not punishing them, we are correcting them. There's nothing to correct in a person who raped a person, whether it's a child or whoever. If you killed or you raped, there's nothing that can be corrected to you. You must stay in prison. That's where you belong.
Chuma, I wanted to ask you, so with the two individuals that you say you know, who were convicted in rape and later let out, how were they treated by their communities?
You see, the community, when you are coming out of prison, I don't know, most of the places like where I stayed in, people are, I don't know whether they are scared of you or something. For example, that guy that killed 11 people in Kailicha, even Mr. Pekikele was there when he was still a minister. That guy that recently died now in Kofumbaba. That guy, everyone was scared of that guy. You see? So when someone is coming out of jail, so people they do nothing about it. Because when they take law into their hands, the government is stopping them, arresting some of the community members who take law in their hands. So people are not doing anything.
Okay, all right, Chuma, we're going to
I know these two guys. They are living freely. I know them. I see them almost every day.
Okay.
Yes.
Chuma, we're going to have to leave it there. Chuma out in Cape Town, and I'm asking that question because what is it reasonably that communities then can do, and what level of reintegration back into society should be allowed for those individuals? And this is where things get tricky because, the National Sexual Offences Register, in terms of accessing that, it's limited. And so you could very well have many of those that have committed these offences still having access to minors, still having access to doing it again. Let's take the latest news headlines. We'll continue with the open line after this.
Good morning. In the headlines, KwaZulu-Natal Human Settlements MEC Sibuniso Duma has announced they found land to build permanent homes for the 1,069 families displaced by floods in the province. Labour Federation KUSATU says it's concerned that rising municipal debt will affect basic services. National Treasury issued a circular revealing that the total number of creditors owned by municipalities has increased by 24 billion rand in the 2024-2025 financial year. And Britain's Prime Minister Keir Starmer is hosting a 2-day international meeting to tackle what it calls the global threat of illegal migration. I'll have details on these and other stories at 10.
Masandawana have a master plan to win in their own backyard to ease off the pressure before the trip to the north. But the Beast of Africa want to demonstrate why they are also called the Smiling One. This is the first leg quarterfinal battle of the Total Energies CAF Champions League. Do not miss out on the delight of African football. Mamelodi Sundowns versus Esperance de Tunis on Tuesday, 1 April at 2:30 p.m. live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4, SABC 1 and SABC Plus. Also available on SABC radio stations at 3 p.m. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
Are you surprised by this plan of action from the ANC that political school or nothing? You have to go to school and pass first, essentially.
This is not the most profound intervention that is needed, but an intervention has been needed for some time. They do not know the history and the purpose of the ANC. So you cannot take those people through a crash course. That would be the equivalent of taking a pig that you see, this is a pig, and putting lipstick on it and think it will be a lady.
Political analyst on DS1 is going to leave me with this image, as he said, if you find a pig or you take a pig and you put lipstick on the pig, it's still a pig. It's not a woman with lipstick.
You're listening to the National Pulse. Missed it? Find the podcast at safm.co.za. Call us on 086 000 2032.
Good morning, Cathy and listeners. Just on the child rape statistics, I mean, to me, proper persecution, rooting these bad people out and everything is just kind of putting a band-aid on the problem. The real problem stems from men not addressing their childhood traumas and perpetuating this cycle of then going forward, bringing that unhealed trauma into their life as adults and violating children in their lives. There needs to be a lot of attention given to men in this country, and providing safe spaces for them to come together and heal their childhood traumas in ways that don't involve this masculine kind of way that we have in the country of just getting together and drinking and not addressing the problems in other ways. So to me, that is the main root of the cause. We need to address our traumas that we as men in this country, as adult men, experienced during our childhood. Thank you, John, Cape Town.
Hi, this is Cathy. This is Siki in George. I woke up disgusted by the AfriForum for standing for that principle while a 7-year-old is raped. And AfriForum doesn't get out of controversy really, because just a moment ago they were busy in the USA saying that we are taking white people's land. They always stand for things that, they stand for colorism. As long as it's white, then it's right, or it's being violated, I don't know what they stand for, really.
Good morning, Cathy. It's you in Cape Town. Cathy, yeah, this rape of young children, I don't know, as a man, there's no justification of that things. And I also blame, somewhere, somehow, I can blame the government as well. Why? Because the government is not tough enough for crime, because those are criminals that's doing things like this. Yes, they are in our society, but if the government was so tough enough that these people, when they go to jail, they must do hard labor, they must suffer there before they eat, they must work hard, people will change before they do what they're doing, horrible things like this. I feel so bad as a man to hear all those type of things for children every day and every single day. It's making me so sick. Tio in Cape Town. Thank you.
Good morning, Osketi. It's the trucker here in Gauteng. Osketi, the scary part is when you go to the social media and see the comments that are being made by some men. The comments are just scary. Because even yourself, you wouldn't be comfortable even having friends, male friends, coming to your house because you've got daughters. You don't know what's going on in those people's heads. Even sending your own daughter to a school holiday at a relative where there's a man, you are even scared. Children are not safe at schools. They are not safe at their own homes. No.
Well, thank you for those WhatsApp voice notes. We'll take more on 0614-104-107. And, of course, the number to dial this morning, 086-000-2032. Yeah, Uncle JJ, Freddie, the truck driver, you're right, that it is increasing the levels of anxiety among parents, and rightfully so, because we're coming to learn and to understand that there are very few spaces that are safe for children. And so, you have to be overprotective. You don't have a choice, given the kind of society that we're in. But John raised something important around childhood traumas. And think about it, right? Because if this is a result or a consequence of a generation or generations of men being unable to deal with childhood traumas, and they're perpetuating that onto a new generation, think about what then happens to what kind of society comes out of statistics as what I read earlier on this morning. So in 30 years' time, when these children are no longer children, they're not even youth anymore, what kind of society would would come out of the consequences of this behavior. Somebody else saying, wow, John in Cape Town is spot on. I actually got goosebumps by his comments. Thank you, John, for sharing that message. Chief, you're calling us from Cape Town. Good morning.
Good morning, Cathy.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, rightfully so. I'm a first-time caller, but I listen on SASM daily and night.
That's wonderful. Yeah. I'm glad to hear that. What do you want to talk about this morning?
Oh, this topic of the rape. About rape, Cathy.
All right, go for it.
Thank you. Most callers have said what I wanted to say, so I'll be brief to save time. Cathy, the system is the cause. If the perpetrator knows that is planning and knows very well that at the end of the day, the end result of the crime that he wants to commit, he or she wants to commit, is that he will land in a BNB, because the jails nowadays are BNBs. In actual fact, Cathy, it is better life in South African prisons than the life outside prisons, because the perpetrator has got TV where you can watch the derby, the Soweto derby. I mean, he's in luxury in prison. So the system, once there's no consequences, then we can cry until, we don't have tears anymore. It's the system, the system.
Chief, I would say that I wouldn't confine it solely to the legal system. I would also say that it is the social system. And that's the system that we often don't want to confront. Because it's easy for us to point to, the legal system, because, well, that's government, is somebody else's responsibility. But the social system, we don't make it untenable for people who have committed rapes to exist in society.
I agree with
we
you,
give them second and third and fourth chances. They have the opportunity to reinvent themselves. There is no true societal consequence for those that are perpetrators of these crimes.
The problem with that, Cathy, is not that, because remember I said some of the points that I wanted to raise has already been raised. Now what you're talking about, Cathy, in my time, I'm not a youngster. In my time, you wouldn't dare, Cathy, attempt to do anything wrong. I'm talking about smoking in public when you see an adult approaching you. You wouldn't. If you can walk with a girl, you wouldn't as a girlfriend. You wouldn't. You will separate, and then when the parent, not your father or your mother, that parent, until she disappears, then you will engage again. Just walking. There were no rapes those days. Why? Because the community were together. You were afraid to do any crime. Now we're talking about rape. So, and another thing, the TV. These soapies, these things that we see on television, I'm telling you, they are destroying our future. No wonder. Now, even youngsters, they rape another youngster.
Yeah.
A youngster raping a youngster.
Yeah.
Because it's there on television. And then the end result, like I said, they go to a BNP called Paulsmoor or any prison in another province where there are no consequences. They live a better life than outside. My parting shot, murder and rape, they should come here to Robben Island. Robben Island. Leave them there. No prison official should be there. Just dump them there. Let them pile there. If they want to escape, the sharks are waiting for them.
Chief, let's leave it there. Let's leave it there. Chief, out in Cape Town, yeah. Very different issues being touched on there by Chief. Thanks for that contribution. Let me go to Yanga. Yanga, you're calling us from Rosebank. Good morning.
Good morning, Askesi. Yeah, no, Askesi, you know, your remarks as a father who has two daughters, really, and who are not aging with me. They came with my mom, who's 78. Yeah, it is scary. But, Askesi, on a personal note, you know, these institutions, I want to specifically talk about Standard Bank. You know, they are led by black people, you know, who suppose really to transform them. But unfortunately, I'm disappointed at Mr. Usem Shabalala, you know, because, you know, they continue in this fashion of enslaving black people. My landlord has put his flat on the market, you know, and I was the first person he talked to me about, and I went to Standard Bank to ask for a bond. And they declined, and the following day, I got a call from them again, only to tell me that congratulations, they can finance a vehicle if I want to go to a dealership. So, you know, black people are made, you know, to be slaves of banks through, you know, this vehicle financing and credit cards. But, you know, when you want to own a property, they just, you know, decline you. We are good for them as profit making through, you know, enslaving us, you know, putting us in this dark hole of death as KP, as black people. And I think, you know,
and
I don't know,
you don't think it's maybe associated with the cost of either? I mean, I don't know how much the car you wanted to buy, you know, what the offer on a car loan was versus the home loan offer that you wanted.
Yeah, no, I can guarantee you, as Casey, it's different, not that much, you know, because I cannot give you figures, but I can assure you, as Casey, if I mean they were willing, you know, they could have given me a home loan, but I mean we are a high risk, you know, and of course we don't have collateral, so we, you know, I mean the criteria they are using, I mean, it's difficult, you know.
Look, you know what? So, I think it's actually something that we can also pass on to Brian, just for him to explain to us why that is the case. Because what you're saying is right. It's much easier to get a car loan than it is to finance property. But why is that the case? Okay.
Yeah.
No, all right, Yanga. Thanks for that call.
Thank you.
Let me do this. Vuiswa. Good morning, Sis Vuiswa.
Yes, dear. Kunjani? How are you?
Kunjani?
Mamela, I'm going to refer to talk about corruption today. I feel like we are not fair to ourselves as African people in this country. We're not fair to everybody else, you know. Because I happen to have served 3 departments in government and happen to have access to classified information. I think if we are to deal with crime, we have to start pre-94. I don't know how the previous administration, which was composed of white people, made their way out with billions that are not accounted for, just as good as the killing they did to our ancestors and our brothers and sisters, leading us to be dispossessed. And I've just picked up, and I'm picking this thing every day. I'm being told by my sources where I do my research as an independent researcher that banks are losing billions to foreign nationals, especially those who have light complexion skin, be it Egypt, be it North Africa, be it Asia. They give them millions of loans at our expense. We are the ones saving. You wonder sometimes when you look at your bank account, I left so much. Now, how did it go? Then you get there, try to get explanation. You're treated like as if you never went to school because someone wants you to believe that what she's telling is what, or he is telling you. So I'm really going to...
Okay, so Vuyiswa, I just need to understand. So are you talking about here allegations of fraud within the banking system?
Yes, white collar crime. We call it that. That's why they are.
And you're saying that money is taken out of people's accounts?
No, I'm not saying money is taken out of people's accounts. They give loans. They give loans to those people. Mm-hmm. We've been here, we South African citizens. You submit a request to the bank that you've been banking for ever since I relocated back from the USA. I've been banking with this one bank, and when you have something, like I'm into art as well, and you will never, there's always regret submitting each and every piece of paper that they request you to what call. But how can someone who's come and run a spaza is given 1 million to 1.5 million? And what I understand is that immediately they get that money, they tear the document, whether asylum, whether it's a fake document, ID document, they leave. But no one talks about it because there's no monitoring evaluation of what banks are doing at our expense. Yeah, okay.
Akwele.
Akwele.
Akweli.
Akwela.
Akwele.
Akwili.
Akwele.
No matter how you say it, one thing's for sure. Akwele is South Africa's most loved water brand, refreshing you with pure natural spring water and delicious flavored sparkling drinks. From every sip to every smile, thank you Mzansi for making Akwele a part of your everyday moments. Akwele, spreading joy to South Africa naturally.
Whether we are at the workplace, within communities, at school, or with our friends and family, we all need to demonstrate the kind of responsibility that we would like to see in our country's future. SFM commemorates Human Rights Month.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
You're listening to The Talking Point, still taking your calls on the National Roundtable. 086 000 2032 is the number to dial. On the WhatsApp voice note line, 0614 104 107. Lord, you're in Gauteng. Good morning.
Good morning, Cathy. My take this morning, Cathy, is the underwhelming visit which was conducted by the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development, I think 2 weeks back down the line, where she descended upon a court called Palm Ridge in Ekurhuleni. That visit to me, Cathy, it completely defeated the purpose in the sense that the minister, she dutifully failed in her responsibilities because after receiving the reports or allegations of corruption within that institution, she was supposed to have alerted the agencies which deals with leading criminals, such as the Hawks. You can speak about the organized crime, anti-corruption and the likes. But she went there without anything to that effect. So for me, Casey, that was just a tick box exercise from the minister's part, because the corruption is there. It is there in our criminal justice system. Most recently, we got the news that there is a magistrate in Bloemfontein who was convicted and fined for interacting with an accused person. So I think the minister, she failed us dismally in this regard, because if we can interconnect this with the matter on the table of the child rapes, and then there are less convictions to that regard, something is drastically wrong in South Africa, Cathy. So I think next time there has to be something which is going to let these criminals within the criminal justice system to alleviate corruption, so that the victims can receive justice. So that is my take this morning, Cathy.
All right, Lord, thanks for that very well considered take out in Gauteng. Unathi, you're in Queenstown. Good morning.
This is Cathy Mohlahlana.
Ngiyaphila, Unathi, go for it.
Ndiphilile nami as well. While talking about crime in our community, there's a previous caller who spoke about white collar crime. I just want to attest to that. So basically, I'm working for a retail solution company. So it happens that I always
You're working for a retail what?
A retail solution company.
A retail solution, okay.
Yes. So it happens that I sometimes interact with these people working for financial service providers. And then the other day I had to go and see this store manager in a certain store. In their store, they provide a service of drawing your I would say your credit report. So it happened that by mistake I came across a credit report of someone whom is a foreign national. This person, according to the information, he had a vehicle, a finance loan, and other loans. And he was in arrears in this finance bank. He was in arrears in this vehicle finance loan. And it happens that at the end, he got a loan, a personal loan of about 500,000. And on my mind was that there was this thing that says, how did this person got a loan of 500 and something thousand while he's on arrears on an ongoing financial loan? So I would attest that there is something that's happening within those financial providers. And I still remember I wanted a vehicle on some other time. And there was a guy who was working as a lawyer who was trying to help me to clear my financial my credit report. He said to me, "Oh, you can see that it is not easy, or it will not take a short period of time for us to clear your credit report. What I can do, I can call someone whom I know from the credit from this credit facilities that can freeze for a day your credit report." So that whenever a bank pulls your financial report, he can see that you're still fine, and then after a day, then you can go back, and at that time you would have already got a loan for a vehicle. And I said, no, I won't take that.
Sure, Unathi. I mean, discrepancies, so many discrepancies in the system, right? And I guess those are often the most difficult to uncover. Yeah, absolutely. All right, Unathi. Let's leave it there. Unathi out in Queenstown. And this is why Parliament was asking the banks the question they were asking them when they were before the committee just 2 weeks ago. It might be 3. It was earlier on this month. But this is why they were asking the questions, because the lived experience of people is one that says there is a bias that people feel they experience when trying to get services and access products that the banks are offering. And the banks say no. But anecdotally, as you heard from what Unathi has said, how do you explain that? How do you explain that? Somebody who's in arrears gets a 500,000 rand loan. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it has to do with how much the bank thinks he's making. But somebody else, lower income bracket, hasn't missed arrears, good credit score, but the risk profile associated with that individual seems to be so much higher. So there does need to be a further clarifying of what exactly is the metric that people are being used, that people are being assessed by. Godfrey, you're in Doornpoort. Good morning.
Morning, Sister Cathy, and to your team. Yeah, I've got two important things that I want to raise this morning, Cathy.
Go for it.
The HPCSA's Second Medical and Dental Committee of the Preliminary Inquiry and the Ethics Division of the Magistrate Commission. So I want to let the South Africans know that these two institutions, Cathy, they are not there for us, but they are there for those who are affiliated in politics or whatsoever. I've lodged a complaint with the HPCSA against Dr. Kuzwa, who's working for the South African Reserve Bank. The way the matter was dealt with, Cathy, I've got the recordings from that meeting because I had to lodge an appeal. The matter, the way it was dealt with, just like people are sitting, having tea or playing dice and discussing my issues. And then my issues were discussed on opinions and how people are feeling. You could hear on that team's recordings to say, hey, so and so, how do you feel? So and so. I mean, I'm expecting professionalism where people will be going into the ethics books of the HPCSA to say, but section so and so is saying 1, 2, 3, and according to this section, the doctor is wrong when it comes to 1, 2, 3. Serious allegations, Katie. That doctor went to my wrote a letter to my psychologist to get my medical report without my written consent. So he accessed my records without my consent.
Godfrey?
And yes.
Can I do this? Can I please ask that we pause what you're talking about, right? I'm going to put you through to the producers because it's time for me to go to news. But we will give you a chance to talk about these matters against the HPCSA. And, you know, it's certainly not the first time that we've had complaints about how they do their work. So while Godfrey goes through to Lebo and Kanya, let's take the latest news update.
In our top stories, companies commit to absorb thousands of job seekers and COSATU concerned over increasing municipal debt. Good morning. 15 contracts worth 460 million rand will be handed over to companies taking part in the Labour Activation Programme. Minister of Employment and Labour Nomakosazana Myth is expected to hand over the contracts at the Mbombela Stadium in Mpumalanga. The companies will be expected to sign a pledge committing to the absorption of 9,600 job seekers. The Labour Activation Programme aims to combat unemployment and poverty by creating job opportunities, skilling and reskilling unemployed individuals, and supporting businesses. It will create jobs in sectors including agriculture, hospitality, civil engineering, and manufacturing. KwaZulu-Natal Human Settlements MEC Siboniso Duma has announced they found land to build permanent houses for the 1,069 families displaced by floods in the province. This includes the 41 families who were displaced by the February floods in Lamontville. These families are currently living in rented buildings called Transitional Emergency Accommodations. Salma Patel reports.
In a statement, the KZN Human Settlements Department say they have had fruitful discussions with the Shallcross Ratepayers Association regarding the tension over the relocation of the flood victims to the area south of Durban. Among the terms agreed upon with the ratepayers are service delivery and recreational space for the community that has been prioritized. The department says they will also work through isiZulu King Misuzulu Kazweletini to utilize land under the Ingonyama Trust to build homes for the flood victims. The MEC is also urging communities not to build houses on riverbanks, wetlands and other areas that are prone to flooding as the impact of climate change intensifies.
4 more illegal immigrants are expected to appear at the Graskop Magistrates Court in Mpumalanga. They were arrested at Brunei and Graskop during Operation Valamgori, which is aimed at fighting illegal mining. Police say the suspects, aged between 18 and 30, do not possess any valid documentation to be in the country. 7 others will appear in Sabi Magistrates Court today. This brings to 11 the number of suspects charged with the contravention of the Immigration Act of South Africa. Labour Federation COSATU says it's concerned that rising municipal debt will affect basic services. National Treasury issued a circular revealing that the total number of creditors owed by municipalities has increased by 24 billion rand in the 2024-2025 financial year. The total amount owed by municipalities to creditors has been reported at 128 billion rand. This is an increase from just over 104.3 billion rand reported for the same period in the 2023-2024 financial year. COSATU's national spokesperson, Matthew Parks.
A decade ago, about 10% of municipalities were in financial distress. Today, it's about 70%. We've witnessed up to 36 municipalities struggling to pay salaries. There's about 160 municipal pension funds which are in arrears due to payments not being done by the employers. We've seen many municipalities, especially in rural areas, struggling to provide the most basic of municipal services, and as a consequence, companies are closing in these towns, retrenching workers and sending their communities into absolute poverty.
And finally, Britain's Prime Minister Keir Starmer is hosting a 2-day international meeting to tackle what it calls the global threat of illegal migration. The talks, seen as the first of their kind, are aimed to disrupt people smuggling gangs and pitting nations against one another. The BBC's Mark Easton reports.
Sir Keir Starmer wants the UK to be seen as leading the global response to irregular migration. Representatives from many source and transit countries, including Vietnam, Iraq and the Balkans, are due to attend. Delegations from the Kurdish regional government, Interpol and social media companies, including Meta, X and TikTok, are also involved in discussions on how to disrupt a criminal trade worth an estimated $10 billion a year. Politically, immigration is a key issue for the government, with both the Conservatives and Reform accusing Labour of failing to get a grip on the problem.
Recapping the top story, 15 contracts worth 460 million rand will be handed over to companies taking part in the Labour Activation Programme in Mpumalanga. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide.
Get unbeatable football odds with SuperSport Bet. From derbies to title deciders, our Super Boosts give you boosted odds you won't find anywhere else. Switch today and get a 100% deposit match up to 5,000 rand. SuperSport Bet is licensed by the Western Cape Gambling and Racing Board. Bookmaker license 101911097. No persons under the age of 18 are permitted to gamble. Winners know when to stop. National Responsible Gambling Program toll-free counseling line 0800 006 008 or WhatsApp help 076 675 0710.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
Seven after 10 o'clock, welcome to the second hour of The Talking Point as we lead conversations that move us. Coming up in this hour, we're going to be looking at a call coming out of Controlesa, that is the Congress of Traditional Leaders. They want a referendum on the issue of land. We'll find out exactly what it is that they're calling for within this hour. And of course, we'll also speak to some of those that have been quite actively involved in this conversation around land, but particularly from a research point of view, to try and understand why it is that we are seeing such minimal progress. So that is what we're going to be looking at and focusing on throughout the hour. Before we get to it, your WhatsApp voice notes from the open line.
Hi, Cathy. I wanted to comment on the rape issue. In as much as you put it rightly that it is a societal issue, the society should be also held accountable, even though the state also has a responsibility. The reason why perhaps everybody is pointing at the state, it is because it's just not easy even if we know these people, to point it out and to hold them accountable, because our own legal system protects and has a lot of protection for perpetrators than victims. If you point these things out, you point these people out, the burden of proof lies on you, and that can be very tiresome and intimidating. Perhaps that is why we point at the state, because the state has given itself more rights and powers to deal with this, but they're doing little. Thank you.
Good morning, Sis Cathy. The statistics on the child rape is just ridiculous. I mean, can you believe it? I mean, it's disgusting to hear that there are so many psychopaths in our society. And yes, you guys are right. Social justice needs to happen. I mean, where I come from, you have a lot of men who sleep with young children, and it's not even a problem. Like, it's a thing. That's what everyone goes for nowadays, and it's really, really, really absurd, and it's disgusting.
Good morning, Cathy. I'm just worried as South African, because if we found out that this child was raped last year, that the story started to surface in 2025 when the matter happened in 2024. What are we saying about our law? What are we saying about cases which involve children? How many similar cases do we have that are not spoken, like the one which took maybe months or so to be reported in 2025? What is taking for long for justice to be saved? Run by Proteagland. Thank you for the question.
Princess Cathy, good morning to you, good morning to your team. Great show always. It's good to hear your voice again. It's Uncle JJ, the truck driver in Bloemfontein. Cathy, as long South African government is still implementing in a way of saying apply for bail, rapist bail, murderer bail, stock theft bail, they'll keep on doing it. They must remove this nonsense of bail. Cathy, enjoy your show.
This is Cathy, beautiful morning and beautiful week. When I hear just Cathy, and I don't know what is AfriForum still doing in our country, and why are we still allowing such an organization that opposes the sovereignty of this country and democracy of this country to still be running business in South Africa? I think we need AfriForum here to explain to us citizens why we should grant them permission to stay in our country any longer. Africans Forum, why are we still having such organizations in our country? And we need a minister and the president to come and explain to us, why are we still having such kind of organization in our country? And this man, what's so difficult for him to just go and take the samples? And the police, this person is obstructing justice. Why can't they arrest the person? Definitely. Or why can't they find alternative ways to get the samples? It's disgusting.
Good morning, Cathy. Always enjoy SAFM. I just want to make a comment, or from my understanding, there is so many killings in townships and also in certain other areas as well. I say township means our African townships and even our colored townships, and there are probably in Indians as well. But to me, what I'm understanding, too many in colored and African townships. What are we doing about it? I mean, like, you would think like apartheid is still around. Who are these people killing? Because I have colleagues, they can't even come to work, they get robbed in their own townships. So what are we doing? What are the government doing about it? It's Daniel from Durban. Thank you.
Algerian giants, the People's Club, plan to impress their home fans with victory before traveling to Mzansi, while the Buccaneers want to triumph away and complete the party in Orlando in the second leg. This is the first leg quarterfinal clash of the Total Energies CAF Champions League. Experience the incredible action of African football. MC Alger battles it out with Orlando Pirates on Tuesday, 1 April at 9 p.m. live on SABC 1, SABC radio stations and SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
Akwele.
Akwele.
Akweli.
Akwela.
Akwele.
Akwili.
Akwele.
No matter how you say it, one thing's for sure. Aquele is South Africa's most loved water brand, refreshing you with pure natural spring water and delicious flavored sparkling drinks. From every sip to every smile, thank you Mzansi for making Aquele a part of your everyday moments. Aquele, spreading joy to South Africa naturally.
Switch to stream with SABC Plus. No subscription fees. Stream anywhere, anytime. Zero subscription fees. Download SABC Plus on Android or iOS and watch the Betway Premier Soccer League, the English Premier League, and the Bundesliga live. You can also catch up with Uzalo, Skim Sam, Generations on demand and listen to your favorite radio stations live. Ukhozi, Umhlobo Wenene, Radio 2000 and 5FM, all for free. Switch to stream with SABC Plus now. No subscription fees. Stream anywhere, anytime with SABC Plus.
Ashraf Gada on SAFM.
Often when we talk to people, we have to give context about a certain thing we bring up. But I can tell you now, just about everybody knows. When I talk about Kill the Boer, everybody knows about it. So let me ask you this up front then. Has it lost its purpose?
I think the same question should be asked. The portion that is Afrikaans in the national anthem, has it lost its meaning? I think we should also be asking, the song Senzeni Na, that was that time, which is still being sung now, has it lost its meaning? We should at the same time be saying, who dictates, who determines when is the song relevant and no more relevant? We should also be clear and see, where does this noise about the song come from?
Seth Mazibuko is patron of the Seth Mazibuko Foundation.
You're listening to the National Pulse. This Human Rights Month, SAFM is deepening a culture of social justice and human rights. It's a time to reflect, engage, and take action for a more just society. From thought-provoking discussions to powerful stories, SAFM is leading the conversations that move us. Because your voice matters, your rights matter, and together we shape a better future. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
Well, last week, the Congress of Traditional Leaders Organization, Controlesa, called for a referendum, which they say could be a sign to resolving the land issue expeditiously. The organization's president, Kgosi Mathupa Mokoena, says many people are passing on without getting their land back. He also believes that the signing of the Land Expropriation Act may delay the return of the land to its rightful claimants. I want us to listen to the statements that he made before I introduce our next panel.
It is clear that the land question in our country will never be resolved anytime soon. There are many claimants who passed on before they can get their land back. Parliament tried to expedite this process, but still beneficiaries are not getting their land back. The signing of the Land Expropriation Act by the President is not allowing our people to get their land back. Based on the above facts, Controlesa is calling for a referendum to deal with the land question once and for all. Parliament must start the process that will allow the people of our country, South Africa, to vote on this matter. Controlesa calls upon the President to immediately after the parliamentary process set up a date for the referendum to take place.
Well, those were the comments by Cathy Mohlahlana, the president of Contralesa. He joins us on the line this morning. Cathy Mohlahlana, good morning to you. Thank you for your time.
Good morning to the listeners, and I'm told that they are my other guests on the line. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you so much. Tshepo Fokane, National Coordinator at the Alliance for Rural Democracy. Tshepo, good morning to you.
Good morning to the listeners and the other guests.
And Dr. Annika Claessens, former founding director of the Land and Accountability Research Center at UCT. She is currently retired, and she was also part of the high-level panel there, which was chaired by former President Cathy Mohlahlana. Dr. Claessens, good morning to you. A pleasure to have you on as well.
Says I'm ready.
Dr. Claessens, you're live on the radio. Can you hear me? All right, I'm not sure what the issue with that connection to Dr. Claessens is, but we'll try and correct it, and hopefully she'll be able to continue with us. So, Cathy Mohlahlana, perhaps then firstly an opportunity for you to explain the call for a referendum. What do you want a referendum on?
Cathy, I like your intro, Madam Khaitiliata. If you will recall, Cathy, I'm talking about I want to give an example of Mpumalanga alone. There are still not less than 25,000 claimants that are still waiting that their claims be processed. In 1995, you remember that Parliament passed a law that enables the department to make sure that there's land redistribution and restoration. Fast forward, Section 25 as well, Parliament, they tried their best to correct this thing. As if that was not enough, the President recently signed the Land Exploitation Act. All these acts, Cathy, they are not assisting people to get their land back. One would clarify this as Contralesa that we're not saying a wholesale of land. They are identified land that was taken away from our people forcefully. We are saying that land must be returned back because all the legislations that I referred to failed. We don't have any other choice now other than to ask people of South Africa as to how they think the land can be returned back. And that can be done by Parliament, because Parliament is the only forum that can also deal with some logistics that will enable the President to set up a date for this process. It is only the referendum that can now assist us, Cathy. You cannot wake up one day. I know the Mohlahlanas were also forcibly removed. They are staying in Mirinye, and some are staying in Mukopane and so on. They were forcibly removed. You cannot one day wake up, Cathy, and say, Wokoku, let's go and occupy our land where we were removed forcefully. It's not going to happen. Now, there are those who are saying from today going forward, it might take another 32 even more years before all the claims are finalized. I said only in Mpumalanga, not less than 25,000. What more about the whole country? That's the reason why Contralesa was saying it is high time now, let's go for a referendum. A referendum, if people of South Africa will say yes, land must be returned to the original owners, the Department of Government must simply implement. We don't want to sound like, you remember when the ANC Women's League said because of the high crime rate in our country, they are calling for a referendum on the death penalty. People screamed and say, hey, the Women's League is doing this, but they are not coming up with any solution. They're just condemning it. Now, when those are going to say the call by Contralesa is misplaced, let them tell us which process can assist now, because all the legislation, as I'm talking to you, Cathy and Wanaresh, it has failed, my dear.
Cathy Mohlahlana, one of the challenges that I think that a referendum in particular often faces is what really is the question being asked, right? Because if it's a referendum, people are either having to vote yes or having to vote no, regardless of what the issue might be, or what the proposal might be. So, in as far as referendum questions go, what is the question that you would want South Africans to be specifically responding to? Because the idea, of should land be returned to its to claimants? Many people would answer yes, but there's of course a legal process that is in place that claimants need to go through. So a question like that, I don't know if it necessarily would have the desired outcome. So what is the question that you think, if the majority of South Africans voted yes to in a referendum, would actually result in the distribution of land?
I am happy when I issue for that question, because we consulted as Contralesa. Our experts are even saying we are even very minimal in what we're saying. We should have gone overboard. But the question will be nicely outlined by Parliament. Of Parliament here. The call we're making, Parliament will sit down and coin the exact question. But what we're saying, as I said in my opening remarks, it is not a wholesale, because it's not all, for example, whites who are cruel in this country. Some of the white people in our country, they are so accommodative to an extent where they allow our people to build houses in their farms and so on. But there are farms, for example, that belong to the state. They are lying idling there without being used. There are farms that are being owned by wrong people who took the land, who did not buy it. They took it by force, or they were given by the apartheid government to people who don't even deserve it, and took our people and dumped them there. The question will come as to all the land that was forcefully removed or taken away from our people, let it be returned back. Now, not exact what I'm saying now, but Parliament, as a formal structure, that is entitled to come up with such solutions. They will coin it exactly, but the principle is that all the identified land where people were removed forcefully, it must be returned back to the original owners.
Okay.
Yes, my neighbor. That's what must happen. And if you don't get that one, I'm telling you, you are still going to invite me next year, this time, to say, Hoshimugwena, we spoke about this, what are you saying now? It won't be resolved. Remember that there was a panel by Cathy Mohlahlana and Annika Klassen and them, who end up insulting our kings and queens, calling them village tin pot dictators. Even now, we're still expecting apology from that panel led by Cathy Mohlahlana for insulting our kings. That's what we're saying as Contralesa, my leader.
Tsepo, let me come to you, because the point that was made by Hoshimugwena, which I think is important, is that we have had all of this progressive legislation implemented that was supposed to help us deal with the land question. It set in place processes, systems for those who are rightful claimants to be able to, make those claims and hopefully in the end be able to be returned to their land. Does a referendum necessarily answer for why we have not made significant progress? And the reason I'm framing the question in that way is because I don't know if whether or not there was a referendum held, if that would necessarily result in a different outcome, if systemically we haven't understood or even corrected the problems.
Thank you so much, Cathy. I really enjoy the input from Hoshimugwena, realizing that there are so many land claimants across the country who are still waiting for their land. This could be claimants who lodged under Restitution Act, the cutoff being 1998 December. It could also be claimants who lodged under the Labour Tenant Act. The cutoff for that one was 2001. It could also be people who are currently living on commercial farms under Extension of Security of Tenure Act, who have spoken and asked the state to say, we want to have a specific parcel of land protected on this farm. So indeed, there are so many claimants in rural areas who are awaiting land reform. And the slow pace of the finalization of claims is actually sitting squarely with government, I'm not sure if the referendum would bring the resolution that claimants are waiting for. we are sitting with claims, whereby the farm owners, some, are very difficult. They are inflating sometimes the farm prices. They are sometimes depriving people the right to even access the graves while the claim is not yet finalized. They are selling and buying different parcels of the land. And what that means is when you enter the courtroom, it's so difficult for a claimant. Our grandparents know and our forebears know where they lived, where they held rights in land, how they were living. But now once the farm changes through different owners, subdivided, different portions, some of them it's companies, sometimes it's trusts, it becomes so hard to pinpoint exactly where you are located. Excuse me. However, a referendum wouldn't bring any different change or outcome from my view. I think what we have to do is turn the screws tighter on the Department of Land Reform and Rural Development. By the way, we are also faced with a challenge to say that the budget allocation has been dropping year after year after year. And I know that Plas and Professor Ruth Hall have spoken about this extensively in the public, to say when the budget keeps getting smaller and smaller, we have to now consider, is there enough money to buy farms? Is there enough money to finalize your claim? Is there enough money for good research? And now we are thankful because we know that we've got legal aid, which has a land rights management facility. So you as a claimant can approach legal aid directly and see if they will be able to consider taking on your land claim. But what matters the most now is that there's been such a slow finalization of claims. The way that what he is mentioning, there are areas where the claims were lodged by individual households, communities, and there's just been an entire mix-up of how those claims have been finalized.
All right.
We've had,
I'm going to pause it there with you. We will continue the conversation shortly. We'll also be hearing from Dr. Claessens. Right now, it's time for your latest headlines.
Thank you, Cathy. In the news headlines on SAFM, I am Onde Lambana, and a very good morning. 14 suspects arrested for alleged robberies that took place in the Bloemfontein CBD in the Free State will appear in the local magistrate court today. This follows video footage that went viral on social media depicting violent attacks on people in the CBD. 15 contracts worth 460 million rand will be handed over to the companies taking part in the Labour Activation Programme. The Minister of Employment and Labour is expected to hand over the contracts at the Mbombela Stadium in Mpumalanga. And the French far-right leader Marine Le Pen is awaiting the verdict in her trial for alleged illegal party funding. Prosecutors have recommended that she be barred from standing for office. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
Taking a look at your markets this morning, the rand is currently trading at 18 rand 26 to the dollar, 23 rand 64 to the pound, and 19 rand 77 to the euro. Markets in Asia extended losses at the closing bell. The JSE is lower during mid-morning trade. Markets in Europe are also trading weaker. Gold is trading at $3,124, platinum $994 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil is at $74.07 a barrel.
Outsurance knows South Africans are feeling the pinch, so you've been looking for ways to save money. You could cut corners with things like that coffee brand you love. Or you could go the easy way, where you could save money on your car insurance. SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754. Let's hear what real Outsurance clients have to say.
So I saved 455 rand. It was quick and easy.
I'm saving 411 rand a month. Outsurance helping me save money.
That saving is actually saving my paycheck. Leave all the insurances and come to Outsurance.
It was fast, easy, and he gave me the best quote. My savings is 644 rand. Come join Outsurance and save some money.
Make today the day you switch and save. And SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754. With Outsurance, you always get something out. A licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's online.
Night Talk with Oliver Dixon.
You and I have a country to build, difficult conversations to have.
solutions to find, and stories to tell. Join me, Oliver Dixon, on Night Talk every Monday to Thursday from 10 p.m. to midnight.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
All right, we continue the conversation on the Talking Point. In this hour, we're looking at the call by Controlesa for a referendum to be held on the land issue. What specifically needs to be asked as part of that referendum is something that Controlesa says will have to be decided on by Parliament, that Parliament would need to debate and ultimately come to clarity. But what they want to see is a lot more action and progress when it comes to the distribution of land. Joining us for this conversation, President of Controlesa, Kgosi Mathupa-Mokoena. Tshepo Fukane is the National Coordinator at the Alliance for Rural Democracy, and Dr. Annika Claessens, former Founding Director of Land and Accountability Research Center at UCT, currently retired. She's also on the line. Dr. Claessens, good morning to you. Let me give you an opportunity to come in here. I think overall, the frustration clearly from the likes of Controlesa, and I would then also say those that have come forward to lay claims, is that the process has taken so long, and they continue to wait for progress in this regard. Your general impression about whether a referendum is the best way forward here? Will it result in any more action than we have seen?
Hello?
Yes, Dr. Claessens, you're live on the radio.
Okay, sorry, I missed a whole lot of what's just been said. Just to say that, obviously, Kgosi Mokoena and Tshepo Fukane are correct that we have a terrible crisis with relation to land restitution claims that have not been processed by government. We also have a terrible crisis with tenure insecurity, where most South Africans don't have legal records to the houses and the land that they have occupied for generations, and so they're vulnerable to eviction, whether by mining companies or others. And then we have the big problem of redistribution, because restitution, land claims, only applies to a subcategory of people, those who can prove that they were forcibly removed after 1913. So those are people with historical records. But many, in fact the majority of South Africans haven't got those historical records, and in fact they were displaced by the wars of dispossession, and they were displaced by the Land Act denying them the right to obtain land legally. So, my first response to the idea of a referendum is the issue is bigger than restitution, and in fact to focus just on restitution, which is forced removals after 1913, hides the problem of massive tenure insecurity and ongoing evictions, and also the need for the redistribution of land to those who are structurally vulnerable but don't have historical records. So I think the problem is much bigger, and I agree with you, Cathy, that we've got to look at the root causes for why land reform has failed. And that's got a lot to do with political will. As Tshepo says, government, sets a tiny budget, which is not adequate to the task. But more than that, government has kept changing tack. I mean, if we look at restitution, it was originally only for the people, and this is according to the Constitution and the Restitution Act, who could show that they'd been forcibly removed. But during the Zuma era, the emphasis shifted to restitution for going to traditional leaders. And there was a moratorium by government on providing restitution to the people who'd actually lost the land, while traditional leaders put in counterclaims for that very land. And that moratorium caused an incredible break in the process and set us back for years and for decades. You know, at the same time, we have a terrible problem of government incapacity, because land reform is a complicated process. It's hard to do, and it needs a radical approach by government. And here we've seen that, far from all of these arguments that what we're looking at is some kind of radical expropriation without compensation, we've seen our government has failed to expropriate any land for the last 10 years. That's even land for hospitals or schools. All governments all over the world expropriate land. During apartheid, millions of hectares were expropriated by government, from white farmers to create the homelands, but mainly from black people to forcibly remove them. So it is incredibly ironic that we have some white farmers, not the majority, but some white farmers, running to Trump to accuse our government, our current government, of taking radical steps to dispossess black people. It is absurd when we look at the history of the dispossession of black people in this country, how law was used to do that, and our ANC government's abject failure to redistribute land even within the terms of the law, even within the terms of the Constitution, which allows and supports land reform. So for them to go and cry wolf is really absurd, and for the President of America to sympathize for white farmers who still sit with very secure property rights, many of which were obtained from an unequal land market in which blacks were prohibited from owning land, is just an incredible irony.
One of the things that you're raising, Dr. Claessens, which I think is important, is perhaps some of the issues that are bubbling under when it comes to the claims process, right? And we're talking now about for restitution of Land Rights Act, because that, of course, is what provides room for people that were dispossessed after 1913 to come forward and lay claim. The relationship between individuals and traditional leaders, and this recommendation from traditional councils that they be the legal entities or legal structures that lodge claims on behalf of communities rather than individuals being able to do this for themselves. Speak to us about the significance of that and the kind of impact that you believe that has on the claim process itself.
Well, basically, you know, forced removals were used to create the homelands. People were removed from what was called white South Africa, and where black people lived in what was called white South Africa, those places they lived were called black spots. So they were forcibly removed from those so-called black spots into the homelands. And homeland leaders, apart from one, who was Enos Mabuza from Kangwani, accepted the process of forced removal because it expanded their boundaries and they got bigger homelands because they got more land and more people through the process of forced removal. So the Restitution Act of 1994 was meant to, in a way, challenge and undo that history by enabling people to go back to the land that they had been forcibly removed from in the common area of South Africa. So the Restitution Act specifically says that to claim land, you have to have been forcibly removed. So it provides that it's the individuals or the groups who were forcibly removed who've got the restitution right. But during the Zuma period, he supported the view that the claimants should be traditional councils. So what you actually have then is a restitution process that would have expanded the homelands, that would have enabled traditional leaders from within the landmass that was the former homelands to expand their power out into the common area of South Africa. Now legally, they couldn't do that because the Restitution Act provided that it's the people who are forcibly removed who are entitled to restitution. So they tried to reopen the process of lodging claims, and during that period they put this moratorium on dealing with all the outstanding claims. And so you had a 10-year period where the claims were just completely not processed, backed up, and they invited traditional leaders and others to put in counterclaims. Then the Constitutional Court said, actually, you can't go ahead with this process of denying the existing claims. You must deal with those first. And that's one of the things that has led to this incredible logjam of claims that are now so old and so contested and so confused that it's become very, very difficult for government to process them. And what you saw there was a big fight over who will benefit from restitution. Will it be the ordinary people who were deprived of the land, or will it be the traditional leaders who in many instances had actually cooperated with the original forced removal? Not all instances. There were traditional leaders who opposed forced removals, but you can see that it was that political tension which led to this incredible delay. And, you know, in a way, it is ironic now that it's Controlesa calling for a referendum on just this one aspect of land reform, restitution, without anything about tenure insecurity, which is something that faces many people within restitution claims and in rural areas.
Jose Mokoena, let me give you then a chance to come in here, because I guess at the heart of it is when you look at the process itself, and as Dr. Claessens has so clearly outlined, there are reasons for why there have been backlogs. As traditional leaders, do you accept that part of your own need to lay claim to or even have access to land is part of what is causing the delays?
Cathy, thank you very much, Wanis. I must appreciate the comment by Tsepo. Tsepo, it is clear that she is staying in rural areas. She is not theorizing. She is practical. She talks about what she knows. Thank you very much, Tsepo. Now, can I correct this, the comments by my friend Annika? Madam, when in my previous life, I was serving in a committee in Parliament that deals with exactly the topic we're talking about. All these years, money that was aimed at expediting the redistribution of land will always be returned back to treasures. They won't finish it. When you ask why is this happening, they will tell you that it is because of the tedious processes that makes it so difficult for the department to expedite the land redistribution in this land reform. Again, can I correct this thing, Madam, to say traditional leaders cooperated in forced removals? To me, if I had to use a strong word, I would say it's a fallacy. It's not even there, because you know your history, Cathy. You know you are from our areas. When the apartheid government forcefully removed people, they'll start by removing the traditional leader and dump him somewhere, and take the people and spread them everywhere. They dump them in roads, in some areas and so on, and leave them there without giving them any option. So it's not even correct to say traditional leaders cooperated when people were forcefully removed. Can I also say, leadership, when we thought that our democratic government will assist in returning back to the original owners, remember, if you are a Hoshi in a particular area, you are holding the land in trust, the very same people you are ruling over. When we thought the land will return back to traditional leaders and their people, our own government created structures, i.e. CPAs and trust. Those are the ones now government trusted to say they can administer land, forgetting about the very same traditional leader who was forcefully removed from those areas. even now, I think I don't want to stoop low and comment about some of the things that Aninka said, because it might lose the focus of why this debate. This debate is about why is the land not, why the land redistribution is not expedited by our government. The question is, the answer is Cathy Mohlahlana. In the Land Expropriation Act, all the conditions that were there are still there even now. Can we imagine someone must decide the public interest and the public purpose? Now, who decides on that it is a public purpose? All it is saying is that if government want to build some structure somewhere in a village or in an area, they can expropriate that land and use it for that particular purpose or that particular interest. It is not assisting in saying, let the people get their land back. It's not assisting us. As contractors, we are clear, Cathy, to say, because all processes, as was rightly said by Aninka this time, she was positive about us. Because I'll be surprised if she'll say anything positive about traditional leaders, because she hates us with passion. But on that one, I think I agree with her that all the processes, as she was supporting me, have failed since 94 up until now. We are going to sing the same song until cows come home. Now, all we need to do now is to come up with some extraordinary measures that will assist and fast-track this process.
So,
as I'm talking to you, money, yes.
So, Kgosi Mokoena, you know, despite these failures, and of course, you know, everybody wants to see progress, but the concern here is that this call that you're making now is specifically because the way that things are set up systemically is that it will be traditional leaders that benefit the most from any process now, including a referendum that you've called for, that it won't be the people, it'll be you.
Cathy, anyone who thinks that way, I think is just lazy to think, because we are saying land must be returned to our people. That people who are forcefully removed from their areas, not only traditional areas, our people. The land must be returned to them. I don't know how come people say, no, traditional leaders will benefit from this. In which way? Because all we are saying is contrary, as I was saying, the land must be returned to the original owners.
Okay.
People know where they were staying, Cathy. You cannot even rob them of their land. But I'm not surprised that there is no call to say Ofantono or Kukemur must also return their land back to traditional leaders and so on. I'm not surprised.
Okay. Kgosi Mokoena, we're going to continue the conversation shortly.
From the shows that bring us laughter to the moments that inspire us, your SABC TV license makes it all possible. Every license paid supports local stories, top talent, and the programs that unite South Africa. Pay your TV license today. Visit tvlic.co.za or your nearest retail outlet. Your screen, your story. Together, we make it happen.
The Hammers want to ease off the pressure with collection of 3 points at the London Stadium to rise from the bottom half.
We picked out Socek, and there is the goal! And he's scored a few this season!
However, the Cherries believe a top half finish will be a good cherry on top.
Crosses towards the back post, looking for Tavernier! Who side-flips it past Vicario! And that is brilliant from Bournemouth!
This is the Premier League. Be part of the thrilling contest between West Ham United FC and AFC Bournemouth on Saturday, 5 April at 3:30 p.m. live on S3. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
Cathy, good morning, and good morning to the listeners. I listened to Kgosi Mokoena since last week talking about the referendum to get the land back. I'm not sure how researched is this idea that he think blacks can only be rich when they have got the land. He must be practical and look around, take the statistics of what have black people done with the land that they were given back, I think less than 5% of the communities are using that land economically well. The rest, the land is left abandoned and vandalized. Mashilu Magali from Limpopo. Thank you.
Does Kgosi Mokoena want the land to be returned to the kings, chiefs, and indunas so that these people can come back and sell the land to the people as it is a practice now? Or does he want the land to be returned to the people? Because what has happened now, the land has been returned, part of the land has been returned to the people, like Isbidiel, and now the land is lying there and nothing is being done with that land. So does Kgosi Mokoena factor that in, that there are so many lands that were returned to the people, but they're lying bare, they're not being used? What is the take there?
Hashtag SAFM Talking Point.
All right. Well, thank you for those voice notes. Your contribution to this conversation is important. Percy, you are out in Matlosana. Good morning.
Cathy, how are you and your guest there? Cathy, I'm a chairperson of Muduane Trust, who are the land owner here in Ventersdorp, in place called Makokskala. There is no progress on land distribution. Even now, we don't own half of our land. We own 6,000 hectares. In the end, we have 720 hectares. There's no resource, there's no fence, there's no nothing. Even as we speak, there is the farmers there who own half of our land, 3,000 hectares. He refused us to enter, to go to graves, to see our loved ones there. And our government, what they did, they takes all the land rights to legal aid. Legal aid is the one who represents us to go to court for those portion that are court referral. They are not doing nothing. If you can dig deep, go there. The people who are benefiting on land distribution are the politicians only, like Nonobalu, like the mayor of Dr. Kenneth Kaunda District, Nikki Wenham. Are the one who benefit on farms, they got everything, the resource. Us land owners, nothing. Okay. The way things are bad there is Cathy. So even if you dig deep to find out how many farms they allocate every year, there's nothing. There is 0.0. They are just buying time using acid land distribution. There's nothing happening there.
Okay.
Why is it so difficult for them to give us other portion that we are waiting for?
Let's leave it there, Percy. Bongani in Durban, good morning.
Good morning, Cathy, and your guest there. You know, the doctor has tabled different scenarios and categories of people who are eligible for claiming land and the difficulties thereof. One category that is also, which applies to us, which happened in my family, is when the previous landowner, we grew up in the farm. So when the previous landowner sold the farm, and when he sold the farm, obviously, farm dwellers are not involved in the negotiations and the deal of the sale. But what then happened was that my parents, as far as they knew, they were allowed to continue living in the farm even after the sale. Then what happened is that the landowner emigrated to England. After he left, the new owner, my father passed away. My mother was then chased out of the land. She didn't see it as being chased out. She just saw it as an opportunity for her to go back home. So as a result then, we have nothing to show for that. So that's just another category. And then insofar as, yeah.
All right, Bongani, I'm going to have to stop it there with you because we're running out of time for this conversation. Tsepo, let me give you a chance to come in, please, very briefly. The issues are complex. A referendum, will it move us forward at all?
Thanks, Cathy. It most likely won't. The biggest challenge remains what we know, and Mamita has touched on this, that we haven't seen genuine reform. And this affects a very big number of people in the country. And that again is government failure, unwillingness to actually reconcile with the fact that in communal areas, we are relying on the PTO, which are a vestige and a legacy of apartheid. We've not seen the state give us or bring us ideas, proposals for how can we recognize these customary land rights and protect them better, whether there's a claim or with a traditional leader or anything, a land deal, an investment. So I think the pressure and the power, we need to turn it straight back on the state, back on the department to say land reform has got to be in its pillars. Tackle all of them.
Okay. Dr. Claessens, it seems to me that the elephant in the room is the actual lack of political will.
Yes, I'm afraid it is. And I'm afraid that there really has been a kind of government has actually developed policies that accept the status quo, of massive inequality, and in a way key people in government are benefiting from the status quo, through mining deals, through being on all these boards and whatever, so that instead of grasping the opportunity for a radical redistribution of land, which is where we started in 1994 and which slowly started to take off, we've had a shift in policy towards really supporting various kinds of elites, whether it's well-to-do farmers or whether it's traditional leaders or whatever. And I think until government actually becomes committed to land reform for ordinary people, starting with the most vulnerable, the people who actually face eviction, as the man spoke about people being evicted from farms or people being evicted from so-called communal land for mining and other development projects, and those people's land rights are being expropriated for nothing because they're not being recognized. So until government actually has the political will to say we need to deal with the massive structural inequality that was created by centuries of dispossession,
all right,
and come up with proper policies, I don't think a referendum will make a difference.
Let me thank all of my guests for their contributions this morning.
Thank you, Cathy. Top stories. Bloemfontein CBD robbers appear in court, and French political leader on trial for illegal party funding. For SAFM News, I am Ondolambana, and a very good morning. 14 suspects arrested for alleged robberies that took place in the Bloemfontein CBD in the Free State will appear in the local magistrate court today. This follows video footage that went viral on social media depicting violent attacks on people in the CBD. A woman is seen in the video being forcefully pulled out of a vehicle by 6 men while robbing her of her belongings. In another incident, a man is pickpocketed by a group of men. Police say the suspects face charges of aggravated robbery. Minister of Basic Education, Sivua Gwahube, says one of the most effective tools to combat violence against women and children is teaching young boys how to respect and treat women from an early age. The minister made the remarks at the Uyinene Mkhwedyana commemorative lecture at Kingswood College in Makanda in the Eastern Cape. This comes in the wake of growing calls for justice in cases such as that of a 7-year-old girl who was allegedly raped at a private school in Matadiel. Gwahube says change starts in the society.
It's actually incredibly important because I think for the longest time there's been a misconception that somehow when we talk about violence against women and children in particular, this is a message that should be directed at children and women, when in fact they are not the perpetrators of violence. They are not the ones who are impeding violence upon themselves. And so if we are going to really see change, it's not just change that's going to come from government. It has to be a societal change.
15 contracts worth 460 million rand will be handed over to companies taking part in the Labour Activation Programme. The Minister of Employment and Labour, Nkosazana Meth, is expected to hand over the contracts at the Mbombela Stadium in Mpumalanga. The companies will be expected to sign a pledge committing to the absorption of 9,600 job seekers. The Labour Activation Programme aims to combat unemployment and poverty by creating job opportunities, skilling and reskilling unemployed individuals and supporting businesses. It will create jobs in sectors including agriculture, hospitality, civil engineering and manufacturing. Labour Federation COSATU says it is concerned that rising municipal debt will affect basic services. National Treasury issued a circular revealing that the total number of creditors owed by municipalities has increased by 24 billion rand in the 2024-25 financial year. The total amount owed by municipalities to creditors has been reported at 128 billion rand. This is an increase from just over 104.3 billion rand reported for the same period in the 2023-24 financial year. COSATU's national spokesperson, Matthew Parks.
A decade ago, about 10% of municipalities were in financial distress. Today, it's about 70%. We've witnessed up to 36 municipalities struggling to pay salaries. There's about 160 municipal pension funds which are in arrears due to payments not being done by the employers. We've seen many municipalities, especially in rural areas, struggling to provide the most basic of municipal services, and as a consequence, companies are closing in these towns, retrenching workers and sending their communities into absolute poverty.
The French far-right leader Marine Le Pen is awaiting the verdict in her trial for alleged illegal party funding. Prosecutors have recommended that she be barred from standing for office. Today's verdict is one of the defining days of Le Pen's political career that could see her excluded from the next presidential election. The BBC's Hugh Schofield has the details.
If the judges follow the call of the prosecutor in November's trial, they'll not only find her guilty, but also declare her ineligible for public office for a period of 5 years with immediate effect. If she's convicted, Marine Le Pen will certainly appeal, which would normally leave any punishment in suspense pending the appeal trial. But under a quirk of French law, the judges can rule her ineligible from running straight away. As things stand, Marine Le Pen is ahead in the polls and has a strong chance of winning in 2027.
Recapping the top story, 14 suspects arrested for alleged robberies that took place in the Bloemfontein CBD in the Free State will appear in the local magistrate court today. This follows video footage that went viral on social media depicting violent attacks on people in the CBD. I am Mondela for SAFM News Headlines at 11:30.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide.
Switch to stream with SABC Plus. No subscription fees. Stream anywhere, anytime. Zero subscription fees. Download SABC Plus on Android or iOS and watch the Betway Premier Soccer League, the English Premier League, and the Bundesliga live. You can also catch up with Uzalo, Skim Sam, Generations on demand and listen to your favorite radio stations live. Ukhozi, Umhlobo Wenene, Radio 2000 and 5FM, all for free. Switch to stream with SABC Plus now. No subscription fees. Stream anywhere, anytime with SABC Plus.
Akwele.
Akwele.
Akweli.
Akwela.
Akwele.
Akwili.
Akwele.
No matter how you say it, one thing's for sure. Aquele is South Africa's most loved water brand, refreshing you with pure natural spring water and delicious flavored sparkling drinks. From every sip to every smile, thank you Mzansi for making Aquele a part of your everyday moments. Aquele, spreading joy to South Africa naturally.
Ashraf Gada on SAFM.
Sintu in Midrand, hello.
Ashraf, I don't know this Halabalo man about this song. I think it's still relevant to me, as your guest also indicated that it speaks to the system, not to the real killing of the poor. And you'll recall that there was a song which says that loosely translating to say that we'll never go to Obama's because there's a lot of guns there, you see. But people can interpret songs differently, and knowing the Americans and Trump himself. But I think it's still relevant.
This is SAFM.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
Hello, Cathy. Good morning. I mean, these claims, these refunds, land claims, they are very slow. Half of my village, half of the people of my village got their money, but half of the people in my village have not got the money, and there's nothing said now. I mean, the process is so slow, and the people in East London, they've gone quiet. I mean, it's quiet. We don't know what's going on. People are going to die before getting this money. I don't know what's wrong. Why is it so slow? Why is it so slow to process these claims?
Morning, Cathy. It's Mtundebe. Very, very quick one. You know, Cathy, every time when I hear people talk about land and the return of land, I never feel like they're talking to me, to be honest with you. I'm a Black South African, still young, but the way on how they're talking about it, they don't talk about it to make sure that the land is redistributed to everybody. It's always about, every time they're talking about it, it's always about the people which were forcefully removed. And for something which has happened maybe, I don't know, maybe in 1967, for people, I mean, like, those people are very old, and I'm living in 2024, you know, so I never feel like they're talking to me.
Good morning, Cathy. I fully support Contralesa's call for referendum on the land issue or land question, because we need our land back. We must restore our dignity. Currently, the ANC government has failed dismally to redistribution of the land. The expropriation bill that was passed recently is not going to resolve or address the land issue in the country. So this is Nolan Mafefe Limpopo. Thank you, Kathy.
Hashtag SAFM Talking Point.
All right. Well, thank you for those WhatsApp voice notes that you've sent through. Yeah. Issues around the commitment to the land restitution process. Ultimately, if your money is not where your mouth is, then you are unlikely to be able to follow through on whatever commitment is made, especially from a governance point of view. And we know that when it comes to the question of land reform, less than 0.4% of the budget had been allocated to land reform at the time that the High Panel conducted its work by 2019. 0.4%. And of that 0.4%, only 0.1% had been set aside for land redistribution. So the reality is that even when we don't have money going towards it, we can't expect that there will be greater efficiencies in how it is administered, in how the process is run. Well, speaking of budgets, let's talk about this week. It's a big week. We're all looking to see what is going to happen on Wednesday when the budget vote is expected to happen. Coming out of the weekend, multiple reports about tensions. This is within the government of national unity. Which way should things go? And as far as voting is concerned, over the last couple of weeks, we've also heard reports of the ANC being in talks with the likes of the EFF, the MK, Action SA, all of them in those talks in a bid to suss out whether there could be potential partners who would vote with them where the budget is concerned. Let me invite onto the show Dr. Oscar van Heerden, Senior Research Fellow at the Center for Diplomacy and Leadership at the University of Johannesburg. Dr. van Heerden, good morning.
Good morning, Cathy, and good morning to your listeners.
Professor Bonge Dumisa is an independent economic analyst. Prof. Dumisa, good morning to you too.
Good morning to you, Cathy, and your SAFM listeners, wherever they are.
Well, thank you both for making time to be part of this conversation. This is quite a significant week because for the first time, and it's interesting because over the years, or at least when we look at the different administrations, there's always been an acknowledgement that a process like budget voting was reduced to being merely just a tick box exercise, right? That even if there were things in the budget that didn't make sense, there was spending that didn't make sense, it certainly was not going to be the case where you saw members of the ruling party then vote against it. And I suppose that's been the significant change that last year's election has ushered in, that now those who oppose the vote and don't believe that it is a vote in the best or that oppose the budget and don't believe it's a budget in the best interest of South Africa will be able to make it known, and that has an impact on whether or not the budget can be passed for the very first time. Dr. van Heerden?
Yes, Cathy. You know, the truth of the matter is that when we talk of effective government, anywhere in the world, there's really three things that we expect from an effective government. The one is that sufficient amount of MPs, members of parliament, are mobilized in order to elect a president as the first step. Two, that president must then constitute an executive, in our case a cabinet. And three, that executive, together with parliament, has got enough support in order to pass the budget. And those three elements are really what is needed when we talk of an effective government. If we fail on any of these three issues, we are not able to elect a president, we cannot constitute a cabinet, and in this case, we cannot pass a budget, then you are talking of a dysfunctional government. And that has its own consequences and concomitant negative impacts.
Can I take this a step further, Cathy?
Please go ahead, Prof. Dumisa.
Okay, I think because this is the first time in our 30 years of post-apartheid era that we are faced with a situation where we have a coalition government, whatever you want to call it, at all three spheres of government. And many people outside there may take this as an anti-ANC vote, etc., to test the ANC. The whole thing about budgets not being passed and affecting the country is not just for countries where you've got political tensions, but it is happening in many other countries, even in countries where you don't have coalitions. In the United States of America, I'm not talking about the USA after the Trump re-inauguration on the 20th of January 2025. In the USA, a number of times you will have that pressure where the Republicans and the Democrats will argue about the budget issues, and we have had in certain instances, and not just once, a number of times, where some of the government functions actually had to be stopped until that whole budget impasse had been resolved. So I think we are new in this game of coalition governments, so people are still emphasizing more on political party issues rather than the real issues. I believe that it is high time then that we address the real issues about this budget rather than making it a political party contestation.
Cathy?
Yes.
There's two things that I should perhaps also mention in regards to your question. The one big lesson that we have learned is that now that we've entered the era of coalition politics, the agreement that is signed around how we are going to cooperate as differing political parties becomes quite critical. And what this agreement around the budget has shown us in 2025 is that there wasn't a sufficient amount of time spent on all the necessary elements within the agreement between the coalition parties. So, for example, it is quite clear that there had to be an agreement on, for example, macroeconomics. Broad strokes about expenditure. We definitely must spend X on basic education, on health, and so on and so forth. But also the non-budgetary items, such as, for example, the distress grant, the additional monies for core government functions. These are all things that had to be negotiated. And we see even another element, which is not the focus of your show today, is foreign policy. The DA realizing that because they didn't put that matter front and center with regards to the agreement, the statement between the coalition partners, they now find themselves at a disadvantage in terms of not being in agreement with our international relations stature and posture and so on and so forth. So that's the first thing, that in future, much more care and much more concentrated, deliberate attention must be given to the big issues, including element of the budget, in order to avoid this kind of impasse that we are having now. And then, of course, secondly, the big lesson here is that the days of a majority party in parliament who could just push through a budget is gone. And I think that National Treasury has learned that lesson the hard way this time around, because usually, Cathy, everything is up for discussion with regards to the budget. There's broad consultations, the private sector, labor, and of course other political parties in parliament. But the one element that was never really open for discussion was the issue of tax. That was something that Treasury kept very close to their chest. They discussed it only with the presidency, and then on the day, we all wait with bated breath to hear, is there going to be increases? Will there be increases on sin tax? Is there going to be increases on value-added tax? And so on and so forth. And because the ANC was the dominant 50-plus party in parliament, it used to just go through. So I agree with the professor that this time around, it is not the case. The ANC sits at 40%. It is reliant on other coalition parties. Sure. And that way of doing business with regards to budget processes is not the way that is going to fly anymore.
The issue of the agreements and how detailed they were or they weren't, and as far as some of these important aspects of government efficiencies are concerned, Prof. Bonke, I mean, the sense that I get is that that was done intentionally so. If you can recall, after the elections, as the conversation around the formation of a government of national unity was taking place, many South Africans were asking, these are political parties that have very different ideological views of how South Africa should be governed. What are the values that are going to be holding this coalition? And how is that going to affect and influence South Africans? And that's when we also saw the talks and the calls for a national dialogue to take place, because there was this inference that whatever the national dialogue that will bring different sectors of society together would come up with, that would also be an input to this government of national unity, to truly make it a government of national unity. Now that has not happened. And today we are having this conversation around whose interests are protected. And we can have a debate about, whether or not, one political party represents the interests of South Africans more than the other. But the point is that when they're in those negotiations, nothing gives the majority of South Africans the assurance that indeed it is their interests and not the interests of political parties that are being protected.
I hear what you are saying, and I'm not really disagreeing you on that one. Safe to say, yes, there were many other things which were supposed to be discussed and were not discussed at that particular point in time. And this is a lesson for us in South Africa then, that we must exhaust all issues when we are discussing these coalition governments. However, if ever we really care about the interests of South Africans of all income groups and classes, because we can avoid saying that there are classes in South Africa. We do have classes other than the races. I think at this particular point in time, political parties, I know that we have the local government elections next year in 2026, and you can see that people are really pushing the agendas of next year. However, in the interest of South Africa, political parties must actually say, in statistics and in economics, there is a term which is used, which the ordinary people do not normally use: optimization. So where you say, yes, I cannot get the maximum of whatever I want, but I can optimize on it. I think the political parties must come to this with that. I'm one of the people who, I think even here on SAFM, but I think even here on SAFM, but on different platforms, where before the first budget date in February, I did say there must be no tampering with that. I specifically mentioned that. And for a reason, I stated that it was regressive, etc. That is now past tense. The Minister of Finance still came up with, was supposed to come up with that 2%, which they were all going to be entitled to reject immediately. In business and in politics, it's a game of trade-offs. As it is now, with the 0.5% now in tax year 25-26, and another 0.5 in tax year 26-27, the 0.5% per tax year, I think under the circumstances, we must look at the big picture, under the circumstances is very reasonable. So when people say that they are still basing their objections on the VAT increase, I really doubt if ever that is really true. It is really politicking as it is now. The danger about that thing is tomorrow is the 1st of April. I keep on having many people who contact me, media, not social media, the mainstream media, say it's the 1st of April tomorrow, so what happens? And I say, I cannot give answers to that. But if anything goes astray because of political parties pushing their own agendas, it will be very, very okay. The Minister of Finance said that there are MPFNA ways around this thing, but it would be very, very unfortunate because I can tell you there would be no plausible budgetary issue that would be holding things back. It will just be politics.
Oscar,
Okay.
I want you to come in and tell me, number one, if you agree with that view, and also just on the issue of trade-offs. And again, the decision that is made, right, whatever budget has been tabled, South Africans need to be able to buy into that budget. It must make sense for the ordinary man on the street. And from what has been reported so far, in terms of what has gone into these negotiations, one doesn't get a strong or deep sense that it is those interests that are overriding the overall negotiations. But let me let you have your say.
No, I think you're right. I mean, the ulterior motives of various political parties is of concern. I mean, we all know, for example, that the DA disagree with the Bella Act. They disagree on the NHI. They disagree with the expropriation of land. This is known. We know, for example, on the last one, the IFP is also very concerned with the issue of expropriation. You mentioned earlier in your insert around the land issue, the study that was done and spearheaded by the former President Motlanthe, where it was very clear the recommendations was that the Ngonyama Trust needs to be tackled. That the concessions that were made in the run-up to the 1994 elections doesn't hold anymore. That land tenure must be given back to the people of KwaZulu-Natal and not with the royal family, and so on and so forth. So they have an ulterior motive. They've got an interest. Similarly with the PA, we know that Gayton McKenzie is a fierce defender of the State of Israel, possibly because he got funding from Israel, and so on and so forth. So we know that these are some of the ulterior motives, but the key issue here, talking about the people, Cathy, is that these issues don't concern the people. These are things that are not budget related. It is outside of the budget. If you look at the DA's Federal Council meeting that they held in the last 2 days, all of the, not all, but most, 95%. In fact, the only issue that is budget related is the issue of the value-added tax. Everything else is issues that must be negotiated and that must be discussed among them and the ANC and others outside of the budget process. But we see that the budget process is now being used or abused, depending on how you look at it, for ulterior motives and political reasons. And I think this is a very dangerous thing. So I think it is very dangerous, and that we must concentrate on what is the tax implications of the budget, what is the expenditure items of the budget, and can we pass that law as to how much each department is going to get, how much is the president going to get, and so on. And may I also just say,
I'm going to ask you to pause it there, Oscar. I'm going to ask you to pause it there. We're going to continue with this conversation shortly. It's time for the latest news headlines.
Thank you, Cathy. In the news headlines, Senior Research Fellow at the Centre of African Diplomacy and Leadership at the University of Johannesburg says the budget cannot be delayed. This as the ANC-led government's budget vote hangs in the balance. 14 suspects arrested for alleged robberies that took place in the Bloemfontein CBD in the Free State will appear in the local magistrate court today. And Magalies Water says it's working to finalize the updated bulk water and sanitation master plan. This comes after the conclusion of the National Water and Sanitation Indaba in Midrand, Gauteng last week. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
Are you a member of a Stokvel Burial Society? Catch Gezaka on SABC2 on Wednesdays at 12:30 midday and at 10:30 at night, and again on Saturdays at 12:30 midday. The repeat is on SABC1 on Fridays at 4:30. Gezaka team will be at Newgate Mall opposite Bree Taxi Rank from the 6th to the 31st of March from 9 a.m. until 4 p.m. to assist your Stokvel or Burial Society. Call or WhatsApp on 081-596-1065. The Facebook profile is Gezaka Stokvel and Burial Society show. Gezaka, brought to you in partnership with SABC Education.
Masandawana have a master plan to win in their own backyard to ease off the pressure before the trip to the north. But the Beast of Africa want to demonstrate why they are also called the Smiling One. This is the first leg quarterfinal battle of the Total Energies CAF Champions League. Do not miss out on the delight of African football. Mamelodi Sundowns versus Esperance de Tunis on Tuesday, 1 April at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4, SABC 1 and SABC Plus. Also available on SABC radio stations at 3 p.m. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
Hammers want to ease off the pressure with collection of 3 points at the London Stadium to rise from the bottom half.
We picked out Socek, and there is the goal! And he's scored a few this season!
However, the Cherries believe a top half finish will be a good cherry on top.
Crosses towards the back post, looking for Tavernier! Who side-foots it past Vicario! And that is brilliant from Bournemouth!
This is the Premier League. Be part of the thrilling contest between West Ham United FC and AFC Bournemouth on Saturday, 5 April at 3:30 p.m. Live on S3. Also available at your fingertips on SABC+. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Denounces violence against teachers and violations of their dignity and humanity. It therefore calls upon the public, parents and learners to protect and respect teachers' rights, because their rights are human rights too. Let us show them some appreciation, respect and the support that they deserve.
#SAFM Talking Point.
Well, we continue the conversation on the talking point. We're looking ahead to Wednesday and the budget vote that is expected to happen. Will they be able to actually pass that budget and the various bills associated with it in order to bring it to life? Joining us for this conversation, Dr. Oscar van Heerden and Professor Bonke Dumisa. Oscar, I cut you off before we went to headlines. Let me give you a chance perhaps to conclude your contributions, and then I'll also come back to you, Prof.
Yeah, and I was just saying, Cathy, that unlike the U.S., and the professor mentioned what regularly happens in the U.S. is a shutdown. They call it a shutdown where they couldn't agree on the budget. We unfortunately don't have the Congress system, so that will never be able to happen in South Africa. Our system is based on the Westminster system, and so what would happen is that if the budget doesn't get passed, the wheels of government will still continue turning. Although there will be sand in the wheels. And the longer we take to pass the budget, more sand is going to mix with the grease, and it's going to be more difficult for the wheels to turn. And so generally, I mean, it's not a science, but government will be able to operate in terms of its expenditure, the departments and so forth, probably until about October. And then the wheels are simply just going to come off. And so it is in no one's interest not to pass this budget.
Oscar, as you're saying that, I'm thinking about the departments right now that have been unable to fund certain projects due to budget deficits. The Minister of Finance touched on this in his tabling of the budget, because he said there was an acknowledgement that many departments are spending a portion of their budget allocations dealing with deficits from the previous year. And I think that's also where the calls for a spending review then come from, to fully understand what is happening in the departments, what exactly is being, where exactly are resources going, so that if there are reallocations that need to happen, it's clear what the projects that are being funded are. So in that sense, Oscar, would there be no impact? So if you're thinking about a department now that has told service providers that we are unable to pay you, we can only pay you in the new financial year, which is post-April, if the budget on Wednesday is not passed, what happens to those folks?
Yeah, so generally, as I've indicated earlier, Cathy, this is actually an act of parliament. It is law. There's a reason why we must pass a budget, because legally departments are supposed to be allocated set budgets that they can spend over the financial year. The law does provide that a certain portion of the previous budget, in terms of the previous financial year, up to 45%, if I'm not mistaken, can still be spent by departments that don't necessarily have those deficits that you're talking about. So that's the first point. In the cases where there are deficits, those departments are going to be able to not spend, particularly on service providers and so forth, because remember, in terms of the the allocation in terms of salaries, etc. It's more managed in terms of treasury, DPSA, and so forth. But in terms of service providers, yes. And may I also just make it worse? It's not only the expenditure of those departments that will come to a standstill. It is also, remember, the private sector. Because government passes a budget that says that there's going to be certain tax implications, tax increases, and so forth on various items, on various services and goods and so forth. Those companies now don't know when is the starting date of those new provisions. Is it from the 1st of May because the budget has not been passed, and so on and so forth. So it is generally going to cause consternation across the public sector and the private sector. And so we need to encourage maturity amongst the leaders of the GNU to try and pass this budget.
Professor Bonke, it sounds like much of it is literally going to come down to the wire. Oscar talks about a call for maturity, that should be what underpins the negotiations. Do you get a sense, though, that is what will prevail at the end of the day? Again, when we look at the reports coming out of the weekend, there was very much an indication that, the DA is happy with how the process is going because a lot of what they've put on the list has now been agreed to. And yes, earlier there was a talk about concessions, but surely concessions doesn't mean that 70% of what's on every party's list is what is agreed to in the budget.
Thank you, Cathy, for this question. Let me start by acknowledging Dr. Oscar van Heerden that at least, sometimes I find myself where I'm stuck with a person who's coming with a political grandstanding thing, and I'm trying to look at it rationally, and so we are speaking the same language. We may, on certain few things, be looking at certain things from different angles, but we are dealing with pragmatic issues here rather than the grandstanding. That makes the discussion more fruitful. Now, coming to your question, I am convinced. Fortunately, this is a very heavy day for me. I had to ask for permission to come and be involved here before going back to my meeting. Fortunately, I was able to listen to someone from the DA earlier on this morning talking to Lasizwe Smelane about this, and I was comfortable with his response, even though I was not really happy with, because he was still trying to bring everything else as if this is now an election year again. But at least the core of what he was saying was, yes, they are now speaking almost the same language with the ANC on this. But even though we were just throwing in, as Dr. Oscar has said, throwing in the Expropriation Act, the Bella Act, etc., which is totally unnecessary. Both of us are saying, let us talk budget here now. The Minister of Finance had initially said they wanted to push it up by 2%, and we rejected it. I rejected it even before it became public. Not that I had any inside information, but because as a principle. Now he has said 0.5, 0.5, etc., and said why he is looking that way. The commissioner of SARS, Mr. Kitswata, had said he needs more money in order to. He mentioned about 150,000 people who are really having it in life. They live soft life, but they're not paying any taxes. That he wanted to corner those people. He must give him more money. So he must deliver on that and show them that he has already started working on this. That is what we should be talking about as it is now. There is not, as I said before, I repeat it, there is no party which can say it is opposing this budget just because there's a 0.5% this year and a 0.5 next year. That would be political grandstanding. So let us hope that common sense will prevail. People must now prioritize. Because if ever you are saying you are fighting for the poor, in fact, parties which never really fight for the poor, all of a sudden say they are fighting for the poor, which I really doubt. We must say the minister has said that they are increasing the number of zero-rated products in the basket. So let us take that thing, and if ever there are still any arguments, which I doubt exist, then let us discuss those things and not trying to import all these other things, the agendas that people are pushing. And I believe that common sense will prevail in the best interest of South Africans. Okay. Let us not use this as a platform for next year's local government elections.
Oscar, let me give you the parting shot.
Yeah, I think that we need to look at the implications of a budget that needs to be passed. There's lots of speculation that if the ANC and the DA, as the major partners in the GNU coalition, cannot see eye to eye, the government, the ANC, is going to have to look further afield. I think the DA needs to weigh up the implications of that. The DA was very clear, Cathy, that the reason why they entered into the GNU was to try and keep an alliance between the ANC and the EFF at bay. They did not want to see the EFF as part of the government of national unity. They certainly did not want to see MK party as part of the government of national unity. Unless they are prepared to compromise and move the process forward and agree that this is not a make or break deal for them, then they can still reach those objectives and keep those parties out of the decision making. But if they are prepared to push it and push the envelope, and the GNU does break, they would be the ones that then encourage an alliance between the ANC, the EFF, and NKP.
Dr. Oscar van Heerden, let me thank you for your time this morning. Professor Bonge Dumisa, let me thank you as well for your contribution. So I guess it's 48 hours? In 48 hours' time, we'll have to have that budget vote. And so the parties then are literally left with 48 hours to figure it out and decide what will happen come Wednesday. We'll be looking at it with keen interest. All right, that's where we leave it for today on The Talking Point. The show is back with you again tomorrow between 9 o'clock and midday. Stay tuned to SAFM for all of your latest news and current affairs.
Masandawana have a master plan to win in their own backyard, to ease off the pressure before the trip to the north. But the Beast of Africa want to demonstrate why they are also called the Smiling One. This is the first leg quarterfinal battle of the Total Energies CAF Champions League. Do not miss out on the delight of African football. Mamelodi Sundowns versus Esperance de Tunis on Tuesday, 1 April at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4, SABC 1 and SABC Plus. Also available on SABC radio stations at 3 p.m. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
This Human Rights Month, SAFM is deepening a culture of social justice and human rights. It's a time to reflect, engage, and take action for a more just society. From thought-provoking discussions to powerful stories, SAFM is leading the conversations that move us. Because your voice matters, your rights matter, and together we shape a better future. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
SASSA Gold Card beneficiaries can still come and collect their new Postbank Black Card. Avoid the risk of not receiving your grant. Join over 1.3 million beneficiaries that are already conveniently receiving their grant using the Postbank Black Card. There are multiple selected outlets nationwide where you can swap your SASSA Gold Card for the new Postbank Black Card. Dial *120*355# to find one near you. Standard rates apply. Postbank, your bank.
Hashtag SAFM Talking Point.
The book reading. Please note that the views expressed in this book are not that of the station. Listeners' discretion is advised. SAFM presents another episode of the book The Thing with Zola by Zibu Sitole, read by Lerato Mvelase.
Okay, I'll start again. Hi, Mama. How are you? Mbali started afresh. I'm a lot better now that you're back together with Oguhle. Oh, are you on your way to go see her now? Mbali grabbed to take the phone off its cradle, but then seemed to think better of it. He looked defeated. No, Ma. Where did you hear that? From Priscilla. And I'm glad she won't be on my case about it anymore. Oh, I'm done with the constant phone calls about how badly you are treating her daughter. It was getting embarrassing, man. And you know how much your father loves Oguhle. She continued. He's thrilled too. You should call him. Mbali sighed heavily and avoided Zola's eyes, even though he could feel her glaring at him. Can we talk about this later, Ma? Mbali pleaded. I have things to do later, so no. It was lucky that you were at Oguhle's house when she fell, hey? Otherwise, you know her mother would have found a way to blame you. Aye, Priscilla is a nut job. Ongama continued. Zola didn't bother to hide the fact that she was now listening intently, as if watching a tennis match. She looked from the phone while Mbali's mother was speaking to Mbali for his return volley. I really wish you and your friends would stay out of it, Mbali said. His mother had instantly sapped him of his carefree energy. Right now, he looked like he had the weight of the world on his shoulders. Stay out of it! Ongama's irritation was clear, even through the car speakers. I am your mother. Huh. Your actions will always be my business. Now what you need to do is pull up your socks, my boy, and start planning to marry that girl. I'm sick and tired of discussing this with Priscilla. It's getting embarrassing, man, and your father agrees. Mbali's response was to rub his eyes. He looked like a 5-year-old needing a nap. Oh, okay, Mama. We'll talk again soon, he said as he drove into the mall's parking lot. Okay, my baby boy, I love you. Ongama's voice softened and she cut the call. When Mbali glanced at her, Zola glared back. Should I ask again? Zola said, gripping the door handle as if ready to leap from the car at the slightest hint of a lie. What are you doing here? Why am I in your car? Why did you send me the flowers when you not only have a girlfriend, but that girlfriend is my new boss? Zola asked, her voice rising. Mbali pulled into an open parking bay, turned off the car and sat back, closing his eyes while he composed himself. The truth is that ever since I saw you at that coffee shop for the interview, even though it was just once and just for a few seconds, I haven't been able to stop thinking about you. Mbali's eyes pleaded with Zola to hear him out, and for once she sensed a vulnerability in him, different to that of the little boy she had glimpsed when he was speaking to his mother. But vulnerable or not, he was still a liar, and he had lied to her face. Nobody played fast and loose with Zola like that. She crunched her nose with disgust and clicked her tongue, stretching out the sound as long as she possibly could. You disgust me. She climbed out of his car and walked away into the mall. Chapter 19. Advice from an unlikely source. Zola walked through the mall grateful that Mbali at least had the grace not to chase after her. The nerve of him, she thought, marching angrily past clothing shops she would normally have stopped to look at. It had been bad enough seeing Ogutle's baby post, but having their relationship confirmed by Mbali's own mother and then having him try to woo her just seconds later, it made her feel dirty. Zola sat down on a bench and realized that she didn't even have her wallet. Now she was stranded. She scrolled through her phone trying to think of someone who could help her out. She landed on her cousin, Zozo's details, and cringed at the thought. But she had no choice. She pressed dial, and an annoying caller tune blasted into her ear. "Hey, Kazi!" Zozo screamed into the phone. "Hey, Zozo. Listen, where are you?" Zola tried to sound friendly rather than desperate. "I'm with Thabo. You know Sundays are for lovers, mus," Zozo said, laughing. "I'm really sorry to interrupt, but I need your help." Zola sighed. She had never imagined needing Zozo's help, but here she was. "Anything, Kazi. What's up?" Zozo was all ears and actually sounded excited. "I'm stranded at the mall in Spruitview, and I don't have my wallet. Can you come fetch me?" "Let me talk to Thabo quickly." Zozo didn't bother with the hold button, and Zola heard her baby voice giggling and cooing before she got back on the line. "Okay, wait by the gate, nah? We'll be there in a few minutes. See ya!" Relieved, Zola found her way to the exit and walked slowly across the open car park to the gate, the sun blazing down and searing the back of her neck. On the street, chattering women in church uniforms walked past. Little kids sucked on ice packets unbothered by the heat, and men in cars zoomed past, some hooting, some shouting suggestively at her from their open windows. She was miserable, and it was all Mbali's fault. Finally, a rickety taxi pulled up with Zozo hanging out of the window, shouting her name. "Zola, hurry up!" Zola climbed into the taxi and perched on the edge of a seat she was sure would tip over at the slightest provocation, greeting Thabo and his friend in the front. "Women are a problem, seriously," Thabo said to no one in particular. "How did you get to the mall without your wallet? How did you think you were going to get home?" He glared at Zola through the rearview mirror. "Thabo, don't talk to my cousin like that." Zozo sprang to Zola's defense. "She's been living in Germany, Pela, and things work differently there. She probably got confused." How? Offensive, but she meant well. Zola studying in Germany was a point of pride for everyone in her family, even Zozo. And now a random taxi driver she had never ever seen before knew about it. "Yeah, but still," Thabo mumbled. "She needs to know she's back here now. Mzansi, it's not like she's new to the township. Next time, Sissy, you'll walk home." It took all of Zola's self-control to keep her mouth shut and be grateful for the free ride. "If you don't leave her alone, Thabo, I swear we'll get out of this rickety old taxi right now," Zozo shouted, standing up and then hastily sitting down again as they lurched over a pothole. Thabo's friend turned around to look at Zola. "What does my taxi have to do with her now?" he asked, his voice rough and hoarse as gravel. "Easy, easy," Thabo said, tapping his friend on the shoulder. Zola sat quietly biting the inside of her cheek. They weren't on the route to her house. In fact, they'd driven straight past to the road to her side of the township and were heading further and further away. "Where are we going?" Zola whispered to Zozo. "Car wash," Zozo said, as if that had been the plan all along. Then she smiled. "So, I heard you have a new boyfriend, an older guy who drives some fancy sports car." She raised her hand in a high five. Zola pulled Zozo's hand down. "Who did you hear that from?" "We all heard," Thabo chimed in. "You might as well have been on TV. Malipoto can't stop about how disrespectful you've become since you came home. Oh, this is that Zola. Tabo's friend laughed gratingly. It sounded painful, like a dry cough. The nasty girl who does all kinds of things in cars. Zola felt her heart rise. Even though this wasn't true, the neighbors were talking, just like her mother had predicted. Another reason to curse the day she had ever met Mbali. But if you have a sugar daddy, why are we the ones who have to come pick you up from the mall, Tabo's friend asked. Zola was annoyed, but she was in their car, and she was now even further away from home than she'd been before. She'd have to be careful with these guys.
There was another episode of the book The Thing with Zola, written by Zibu Sitole, read by Lerato Mvelase. The book is available online at www.penmacmillan.co.za and in all leading bookstores countrywide. It is broadcast on SAFM at 11:45 Monday to Thursdays on The Talking Point. It is produced for the station by Vovi Patala, read by Lerato Mvelase. Technical production, Wiseman Manmele, Nanda Koza, and Tato Mapuruma.
Whether we are at the workplace, within communities, at school, or with our friends and family, we all need to demonstrate the kind of responsibility that we would like to see in our country's future. SAFM commemorates Human Rights Month.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide.
It's 12 o'clock, Monday, the 31st of March, 2025. A very warm welcome to Update at Noon here on SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. I'm Bongi Wazwane, standing in for Sakina Kamwendo, coming up this hour.
Even those who get reported, there's no one who ever gets to the bottom of it. So it means each and every person who does these things to women and children never face the consequences.
The rape incident of a 7-year-old girl raped at her Eastern Cape school has sparked widespread outrage. And today is the deadline for ending pit latrines in schools. Remember, the 31st of March. And of course, we will talk about this story in greater detail and more. You can share your views with us on 41391. SMS are charged at R1.50. Call us on 086 0002032. Send your voice notes to 082 6923909. You can also find us on X at SABC News _radio. You can also find us on Facebook as well. Use the hashtags update at noon. Today, these, of course, are the stories we're covering for you coming up on today's edition of the show. But first, though, Mohlahlana is on standby with the latest news.
Thank you, Bongi. Top stories at 12. Reports say budget vote negotiations are hopeful and Bloemfontein CBD robbers appear in court for SAFM News. I am Mohlahlana and a very good day. Negotiations between the two largest parties in the GNU on the budget may be bearing fruit. Insiders within the DA say an agreement with the ANC is in process of taking shape. The ANC said to be showing willingness in engaging on proposals put forward by the DA on a growth-led budget. While details remain sketchy, these include the DA being consulted on the country's key network sectors, including finance, transport, communications, water and electricity, amongst others. Senior Research Fellow at the Centre for African Diplomacy and Leadership at the University of Johannesburg, Dr. Oscar van Heerden, says failure to pass the budget on Wednesday would bring the country to a standstill and some salaries won't be able to be paid.
This is the new reality with coalition politics. And also, it is not new globally. Many countries have found themselves in this situation where the budget has not been approved. In recent years, we think of Belgium, that has gone for a number of months and months without a budget. I'm not saying that's what the situation should be in South Africa. It will be a devastating blow, and we can only hope that maturity will prevail within the leadership of the various parties in the GNU to make sure that the country is not plunged into this chaos.
The Umkhonto weSizwe Party youth leader Bonginkosi Khanyile says their Where Is My Vote walk from Tshwane to Johannesburg will take place over 2 days. The first part of the walk, which is estimated to take 10 hours, is underway and will conclude in Alexandra, Johannesburg this evening. The MK party, led by former President Jacob Zuma, surprised many in last year's election when it secured third place months after its inception. But Khanyile, who is leading the walk, believes the elections were rigged.
Election results says there is ANC at the top, there is DA number 2, then there is MK number 3. It is not true. Even if you can take all white people, all of them, you give them to DA, including those of Freedom Front Plus. You close Freedom Front Plus. You also take the so-called middle class, which many of them are MK members, by the way, and they say it votes MK. You take all the middle class numbers, you give them to DA. Still, MK is not number 2, is not number 3. DA is not bigger than MK.
14 suspects arrested for alleged robberies that took place in the Bloemfontein CBD in the Free State will appear in the local magistrate court today. This follows video footage that went viral on social media depicting violent attacks on people in the CBD. A woman is seen in the video being forcefully pulled out of a vehicle by 6 men while robbing her of her belongings. In another incident, a man is assaulted and pickpocketed by a group of men. Police say the suspects face charges of aggravated robbery. Magalies Water says it's working to finalize the updated bulk water and sanitation master plan. This comes after the conclusion of the National Water and Sanitation Indaba in Midrand, Gauteng last week. The entity says the plan will shed light on water challenges in the northwest as well as future demands. Magalies Water spokesperson David Magai says the plan will be a key driver in expanding the entity's presence in previously unserviced areas in the province.
Magalies Water welcomes the declarations and resolutions of the recently held Water Indaba in Gauteng province. For this growing entity, which has just gone through a reconfiguration process by having its service mandate expanded to cover the entire Northwest province, the organization is hard at work to conclude the review process of the Water and Sanitation Bulk Master Plan, which seeks to pinpoint problematic areas as it relates to water and sanitation problems in the Northwest province, to make sure that water becomes accessible as it relates to the objectives of the NDP 2030 as outlined by national government.
Zimbabwe's ambassador to South Africa, David Hamaziripi, says there is calm in his country following a planned nationwide strike by citizens. Protesters are calling for the resignation of President Emmerson Mnangagwa. The Zimbabwean government has warned that law enforcement agencies will not hesitate to take action against those who violate the rights of citizens who want to go to work. Hamaziripi says social media is spreading false information that Zimbabwe is a no-go area. Recapping the top story, negotiations between the two largest parties in the GNU on the budget may be bearing fruit. Insiders within the DA say an agreement with the ANC is in the process of taking shape. I am Ondela Mbana for SFM News Headlines at 12:30.
Update at noon, midday to 1 p.m.
Bongiwe Zwane on SAFM.
Thank you very much, Ondela. We'll catch up with you at the bottom of the hour. Let's start with that very top story, the intense talks behind closed doors between the ANC and the DA. We know that they stretched late last night. And this is around the budget, of course, and at the center of this clash, it appears the VAT rate increase in the budget that was tabled 2 weeks ago is still much of the talking point. But when we, spoke to the DA last week, for example, on Friday, they said that for them, it seemed that there was no deal, and they were being told that, things can end as far as the GNU is concerned. But now, with the very latest information saying that talks may be bearing fruit, one wonders what concessions would have been made then as far as reaching the agreement is concerned. Are they conceding that the proposed VAT increase is going to go ahead? Or is there a proposal that says you put that on hold? What happens then with issues around the Expropriation Act? What happens around the issues of of, the transformation as well as growing the economy. So quite an interesting one that we are also watching at this hour. Remember, this is a race against time, because if the budget is not approved, one wonders what's going to happen, particularly in the departments. Remember, the civil servants have been asking that the budget be approved as speedily as possible so that the increase they're waiting for does come into effect, but at the same time, you're able to pay salaries and everything else that needs to be done. So we do have that as one of the stories. And also today is the deadline for ending pit latrines in schools. This follows years of court action after we saw 5-year-old Michael Kombapi drowning in a pit toilet at his school in Limpopo. And the family, represented by Public Interest Organization Section 27, remember in 2021, the High Court ordering the Limpopo Department of Education to provide plans to eradicate pit toilets from the province's schools. And the minister, Sivuya Kwahobe, announcing that they are nearly at the end of the entire backlog. But there were questions about which data is the minister using. Is it the latest one? Is it accurate? And how far does it go? We'll speak to Section 27 on that particular story as well. And then there's also the disturbing story around that 7-year-old learner in the Eastern Cape who was allegedly raped at school. And we understand the incident took place in October and November, sparking a whole lot of outrage on social media. At the same time, there is a 58-year-old teacher who was allegedly caught raping a 13-year-old learner in Limpopo, and he's expected to hand himself over to police. We'll get you details on that to see if that indeed has happened or it hasn't.
Masandawana have a master plan to win in their own backyard, to ease off the pressure before the trip to the north. But the Beast of Africa want to demonstrate why they are also called the Smiling One. This is the first leg quarterfinal battle of the Total Energies CAF Champions League. Do not miss out on the delight of African football. Mamelodi Sundowns versus Esperance de Tunis on Tuesday, 1 April at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4, SABC 1 and SABC Plus. Also available on SABC radio stations at 3 p.m. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Bongiwe Zwane on SAFM.
Civil society organization Section 27 says it's closely monitoring whether the Limpopo Department of Education will meet its own today's deadline to eradicate and replace all pit toilets. In March 2023, the National Department missed its deadline to eradicate pit latrines and repeatedly extended it. Minister Sivuya Kwahobe announcing earlier this month that nearly the entire backlog has been cleared. For the latest now, let's speak to education attorney at Section 27, Demichelle Petherbridge. Demichelle, good afternoon to you and thank you so much for your time. So, from the assessment that you've done in the lead up to today, do you think the deadline will be met?
So there are two deadlines at the moment that we're watching. The first is the minister's, in which she'd reported recently before Parliament that 93% of the backlog that she's working with was nearly done. And what we had noted about that particular deadline is that the minister is working with numbers that were gathered in 2018 in an audit for a program called the SAFE Initiative. And while we commend the minister on reaching such a target, and of course we hope that she will meet that deadline today because that is a very important backlog, we are very concerned that this backlog did not include most of our Limpopo schools. And we can see that on the ground. The second deadline, which that brings me to, is what the Limpopo Department of Education had promised us. As you said, with the court order, they were meant to fix what we call priority one schools by the 31st of March 2023, and that's schools that were operating only with pit toilets, so very vulnerable schools with no other form of sanitation. There were delays, and the most recent deadline was now today, the 31st of March. What the department had told us was that there are 564 of these schools, and by December they had completed 544. And we have been verifying information with the remaining 20, and unfortunately we can see that this deadline is going to be missed. We see schools that have not had any information yet on construction. They don't even know that the deadline exists. Where schools, no problem. Go ahead. Where schools where schools are still waiting for construction. Some have been provided with mobile toilets, thankfully most, but we're seeing really big problems with this. And again, this is just in some of the schools. We have a primary school with over 500 learners only having 4 mobile toilets. So learners are queuing up and they're urinating on themselves because they can't get to a bathroom in time and have to go home. We see another school with over 1,000 learners only using 8 mobile toilets, and they are maggot infested within days and only cleaned once a week. So we're really concerned that today is a deadline day, and we're still seeing this on the ground. So I think we can say with certainty that Limpopo's deadline has been missed.
Is it because, I know you say that there appears to be communication issues with some of the schools, and the data that also is being presented also did not include Limpopo schools, and painting a picture there for us of some of the schools. Is it because of a lack of willingness to be able to meet this deadline, or is there something else at play? And I ask this because we've seen this for years now, and one would have really thought that by now we would have seen at least a move to end everything, and by 2025 we're speaking a completely different conversation on the norms and standards.
I think there was always a problem with political willingness, and it took a whole court case and a court order that was really, really strict to try and get things moving in Limpopo, and we definitely saw strides being made. So we don't want to discredit the fact that things did happen, but that happened within the context of a court case that had to be launched in order to get that movement. I think the minister has been very clear that she's prioritizing this, and we welcome that. And I think there was a very big push on her part. We know she's been visiting schools and helping with sanitation. But again, we are worried about these numbers. If Limpopo taught us anything in our monitoring since 2021, so for example, when we started, the first progress report we got said to us that there were only around 280 Priority 1 schools. Now we're told there are 564 because continuous verification and assessment is being done. So when the minister speaks to us about numbers that were only audited in 2018, we know for sure that there are things missing. There are schools operating with pit toilets that may not be on that list, schools operating with sanitation together with pit toilets, and we know that there are schools with undemolished pit toilets that are not being used but are still on the premises and are still at risk that are not part of that list. So I do think there is a political willingness, but what's needed right now is a proper audit, an up-to-date current audit on what exactly the status of sanitation is at all schools in the country.
And when you look at the mobile toilets themselves, are they a safety interim measure?
For the most part, they haven't been a problem. We haven't received these kind of reports often from schools, but what we've seen now lately is that there's just been insufficient mobile toilets for these remaining schools, and they are certainly a problem. The kind of conversations we're having with schools are tragic. You are taking children out of a pit toilet scenario, but putting them into mobile toilets that could be disease infested and pose just as big a risk to the health and safety of our learners, particularly primary school learners. We're seeing this happening at primary schools especially. So it wasn't always such a big issue, but we're definitely seeing that now, which is concerning.
So as a final one then, if the deadline is indeed missed, and in all likelihood it will be, are you potentially likely to go back to court?
We are looking at this very closely. We've written to the Limpopo Department of Education on the 3rd of March already. After a long delay, we had to escalate the matter to the minister. We haven't heard from the minister yet about information we need and what's happening with these schools. But I did get, we're in conversation with the Limpopo Department this morning. They're going to give us an update as soon as possible, and we'll take it from there. But litigation is not off the table.
Demichelle, thank you so much. I appreciate your time. That's Educational Attorney at Section 27, Demichelle Perthebridge.
Are you a member of a Stockfellow Burial Society? Catch Gezaka on SABC2 on Wednesdays at 12:30 midday and at 10:30 at night, and again on Saturdays at 12:30 midday. The repeat is on SABC1 on Fridays at 4:30. Gezaka team will be at Newgate Mall opposite Bree Taxi Rank from the 6th to the 31st of March from 9 a.m. until 4 p.m. to assist your Stockfell or Burial Society. Call or WhatsApp on 081-596-1065. The Facebook profile is Gezaka Stockfell and Burial Society show. Gezaka, brought to you in partnership with SABC Education.
Whether we are at the workplace, within communities, at school, or with our friends and family, we all need to demonstrate the kind of responsibility that we would like to see in our country's future. SAFM commemorates Human Rights Month.
Bongiwe Zwane on SAFM.
To another developing story, Umkhonto weSizwe Party youth leader Bonginkosi Khanyile is leading the, and I quote, "Where is my vote?" march from Tshwane to Alexandra Township. He alleges that MK Party votes were stolen during the recent elections, which ultimately led to the formation of the Government of National Unity. Khanyile alleges the elections were rigged as he believes the DA cannot match the number of the MK Party in electoral support.
Many of our votes in Gauteng were stolen in Alexandra. So our first stop where we are going to sleep today, we are going to sleep in Alexandra Township. We speak to them and also address our matters that our votes were stolen. Then on the second day, which is tomorrow, we will then from Sankopano, Alexandra Township, shoot straight to Constitutional Court. But a smart man or a smart lady will ask, why are you going to Constitutional Court? Why? South Africa has three arms of the state, which is the judiciary, the executive, and parliament. All these three arms of the state is the judiciary, the executive, and parliament. All these three arms of the state, they have a responsibility of deepening, defending, and advancing democracy. And all of them, they play a critical role to ensure that democracy becomes what we want it to be. Now, when IEC is turned into a junior political branch for specific political parties, the judiciary has a responsibility to play its critical role. A person will say, but why are you not going to IEC and ask for your vote? You can't go to IEC because IEC is the one that is also part of what we are complaining about. But another person will ask, why are you not going to Parliament? Even the Parliament which is constituted, it's not the Parliament which is a true reflection of the outcomes of the elections last year. Because if you rig election, if you still vote, it means the outcomes of parties that we are number 3 in the vote outcomes, they are flawed. It means also to say we have 58 parliamentarians who are representing the agenda of Umkhonto weSizwe and that of society is also flawed. It means even the parliament that is constituted, it is in question. But also even the executive itself. So I'm highlighting this because I want you to trace how deep and how serious it is to rig and steal votes. Comrades, brothers, sisters, and they. It is not true that in South Africa, MK is the third largest party. You know, the IEC says, according to outcomes, people who voted for DA are more than people who voted for MK. Election results says there is ANC at the top, there is DA number 2, then there is MK number 3. It is not true, even if you can take all white people, all of them, you group them, all of them, you give them to DA, including those of Freedom Front Plus. You close Freedom Front Plus, you give them to the DA. You also take the so-called middle class, which many of them are MK members, by the way. And they say it votes MK. You take all the middle class numbers, you give them to DA. Still, MK is not number 2, is not number 3. DA is not bigger than MK. Even if you can say today, everyone that voted for DA, left-hand side, this side, everyone that voted for MK, this side, we are still far much bigger than the DA.
That was the Umkhonto weSizwe Party youth leader Bonginkosi Khanyile. They are embarking on that protest action there to Alexandra Township, as you heard him there talking about the issues that they've raised even during the elections around the stolen votes, they call it, and we'll continue then to track that for you. Let's move on to another story that we are also tracking for you. This is a 58-year-old teacher expected to appear before a Limpopo court today after he handed himself over to the Sibayeng police station for allegedly raping a 13-year-old learner. The man was charged after the school's principal allegedly caught him sexually assaulting a grade 7 learner at the school last week. Let's now speak to SABC reporter Michael Makungo, who is watching the story for us. Michael, good day to you and thank you so much for your time. What do we know so far about what the principal witnessed at the school last week?
Good day to you and to all the listeners. Let me give a clarity. For now, we are not sure if he has already handed himself over to the police station. But when we spoke with the police in the province just about 2 hours ago, they were saying he left his home last week saying he's going to hand himself over to the police station, but he never reached the police station. So they said they did call him and he claimed that he's somewhere in the Gauteng province, but when they tried to contact him later, they could not get hold of him. His phone has been off since then. Now they are saying they are still continuing with a search, or they're trying to trace him. That's the latest. That's the information that we had about 2 hours ago. We're not yet sure if there's any latest development. If maybe 30 minutes ago he handed over himself, but it's something that we'll try to follow up on it. Coming back to the case, we spoke to the police. A case of rape has been opened last week, and according to the police, the suspect, the teacher, allegedly raped the learner on several occasions since last year November until the 7th of March this year. That's the information that we had. We did spoke with the family of the 13-year-old learner, which they are saying they are very devastated by the incident, and they are calling for the police to make an arrest for this teacher, because when we spoke with them, with the family, the teacher was not yet arrested, was not yet even handed over himself to the police.
And is the learner receiving counseling?
He definitely, just now, the family and the learner just left Mount Point Hospital not long. She's receiving psychological support, both psychological and counseling from the social workers and other stakeholders. But they're receiving that kind of support as the family, her mother, her aunt, and herself.
And let's speak about the community as well as the Department of Education. What have they said about this incident?
They definitely, of course, since there is the matter that is in the hands of the police, we have not yet reached the department so far, but definitely we expect they did release a statement last week confirming that there's internal investigations underway by the department on their side, but they've not yet even saying they're suspending the teacher or whatever. That's the information that we have on the side of the department. But remember, the principal is the one who opened the case regarding this matter as well. Coming to the issue of the police, as I indicated, they're still tracing the teacher. They don't know the ways about so far. We did spoke with the community who expressed the shock, and they're saying they are saddened by this incident, saying they expect teachers to act to be parents or to act as parents when they're at work, because these learners are their kids when they're at school. So some of them, they're saying there must be maybe an improvement of monitoring at school, saying maybe for the sake of the kids, to make sure that they're safe, there's a need to improve the security at schools.
Thank you so much, Michael, for your time there. That was my colleague Michael Makungo, SABC reporter, and it's quite disturbing to even hear that this 58-year-old teacher is now on the run, effectively, as police are saying that they are still looking to locate him. The last time they spoke to him, he spoke about being in Gauteng, but has not handed himself over. So we'll continue then to see what becomes of this story, because now there's a 13-year-old learner that has been traumatized by what has been taking place allegedly since last year up until now. So we'll continue then to track that story for you.
Update at noon, midday to 1 p.m.
Muslims across the country will celebrate Eid today, and the new moon was sighted in South Africa on Sunday night, and the announcement was made to hundreds of worshippers gathered at Sea Point in Cape Town. Mlamli Maneli reports.
From the Uqsa Hilal committee that the moon has been sighted. Is going to be Eid, inshallah ta'ala. Takbir! Takbir!
Eid ul-Fitr is celebrated after the month-long fast of Ramadan, when Muslims abstain from food and drink from dawn to dusk. The month of Ramadan is also a period of prayer and reflection. President of the Muslim Judicial Council, Sheikh Riyad Fattar.
What the Muslim Judicial Council confirmed tonight is a collaborative working together with what is called the United Ulama Council of South Africa. We have a Hilal, a moon sighting group, where people go out into various parts of South Africa to see if they can sight the moon. So in Cape Town, as you can see, it's overcast. Other places in South Africa is overcast. But alhamdulillah, in the rest of South Africa, Musina and these kind of places, the moon was sighted.
The MJC says while South Africans will be celebrating, people of Gaza are destitute. Worshippers say while they will be celebrating, the plight of the Palestinians is top of mind.
We are enjoying Eid in South Africa, but the people in Palestine, they won't be able to enjoy it the way we are going to enjoy it. But all we can just say is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala place sabr and contentment in the hearts of those people in Gaza.
It's wonderful to see how the people of South Africa comes together, especially our brothers and sisters of Islam come together, and they bring us some sort of comfortability and belonging.
The day will be observed by early morning prayers, acts of charity such as feeding the needy and visiting family members, as well as the graves of loved ones. Mlamli Maneli, SABC News, Cape Town.
All right, we'll continue then to bring you more on the developing stories of the day. But for now, it's 12:30. Odelambana is standing by with the news headlines.
Thank you, Bongi. In the news headlines, the Umkhonto weSizwe party has launched another bid to invalidate the 2024 national and provincial elections just 8 months after it withdrew its earlier application in the Electoral Court. Negotiations between the two largest parties in the GNU on the budget may be bearing fruit. Insiders within the DA say an agreement with the ANC is in the process of taking shape. And Chinese search teams say they've rescued 4 people from the rubble of buildings that collapsed in the massive earthquake in Myanmar on Friday. A child and a pregnant woman were among those found alive in the city of Mandalay, close to the epicenter of the quake. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
All right, let's check in now with the markets. Olem Patlele, equity trader at FNB Wealth and Investment, joins us now. Good afternoon, Ole. How are things looking for the week?
Okay, just a small recap. The JSE started on the back foot this morning and failed to gain enough momentum to claw its way back into positive territory, remaining range-bound in the red until noon, and is showing mixed performance with fluctuations in different sectors. The general market theme is on the back of concerns regarding the government of national unity over the nation's budget. Biggest personal consumer expenditure holds steady, but core higher than expected, raising concerns about a possible stagflation and continued recession fears, all while U.S. Federal Reserve has highlighted that it will maintain a cautious approach to monetary policy change as it observes the potential impact of policy changes by the Trump administration. The JSE All-Share Index is down 0.74% and the top 40 is down 0.77%. The Rand is trading at 80 Rand 32 against the dollar, stronger as eyes on 2nd April tariffs keep the market on edge, and there's a good chance of reaching a deal to pass the budget in SA. 23 Rand 68 cents against the pound, which is stronger, and 90 Rand 83 cents to the euro, which is stronger. Heading over to commodities, gold is trading up 1.01%, trading at $3,112.23. The yellow metal hit a record high as safe haven demand was boosted by reports that U.S. President Donald Trump was considering imposing broader and bigger tariffs this week. Oil is trading at $72.82, which is up 0.58%. Oil prices eased despite Trump warning of possible tariffs on Russian buyers. Platinum is trading at $955.65, which is up 1.29%. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ole. That's Ole Mpahlele, the equity trader at FNB Wealth and Investment. It's time now for me to listen to some of what you've had to say. I love this part of the show where we get to hear some of your views on the day's top stories.
This types of Bloemfontein. When you go to Kanye, must just stop this. MK is a ethnic group or ethnic party. They did well in KZN, not across the country, unlike the DA. So to say that the DA stole their votes, it's not telling the truth. He must go everywhere and see how many members of MK in the Free State, in Northwest, in Northern Cape, those provinces, they will tell you that MK is only based in Gauteng and KZN and maybe in Mpumalanga.
Good afternoon, Bongiwe. If the government wants to build school toilets for the school children in Limpopo or any other provinces, they must stop this thing of hiring these men in black guys who are in suit, who are there to loot the government because of their expensive English and their eloquence, who are there just to loot. They must find people and get involved with the SGB in school so that they can find those guys who do contract work in townships so that they know their area and build those toilets within days, not years. Protect them.
Good afternoon, Osbongiwe is Frederick Tracker. Osbongiwe, is this how the law is working now? We wait for criminals to come to the police station, hand themselves over. The person has already raped the child so many times and is allowed to even come to the premises of the school and negotiate, even talk to the police over the phone, or come to the police station, to an extent whereby he switches off his phone. What type of criminal justice is this? No, man, this cannot be.
Freya, I'm very disturbed by that, especially because, you know, when one thinks about the trauma that is now on the child, yeah, and one can only hope that we are in fact going to see movement on that part and him just coming to the police station as speedily as possible in order to start the investigations here. And moving on to this, the 2025 the South African Sports Association for Physically Disabled National Championships are currently in full swing in Gqeberha, and already some athletes are setting their sights on qualifying for the World Para-Athletics in India later this year. One athlete is the 17-year-old Joanne Leroux, who competes in multiple disciplines. Vincent Setsula reports from Gqeberha.
The SASA PD National Championships are an ideal opportunity for the up-and-coming athletes to showcase their talent. But for the senior and elite athletes, it will provide an opportunity to qualify for the World Para-Athletics later this year. The 17-year-old Joanne Leroux competes in shot put, discus and javelin in the F46 classifications. She's hoping to reach the World Champs in India and also win a medal there.
There's a World Champs this year. I think it's September in India. So I want to medal there. That's my goal for this year.
The matric student from Nelspruit in Mpumalanga will be hoping to qualify for a third World Champs despite a tender age. She finished 5th in shot put and 8th in javelin in the games last year in Kobe, Japan. But an injury prevented her from going to the Paris Paralympics in France last year.
I was disappointed, but I knew that everything happened for reasons. Like, I'm still young. I'm grade 12 this year, so I also need to focus on my studies and to get into university and so, but I know this is going to open a lot of doors for me if I do good at the Worlds this year.
Her Paralympics hopes might have been shattered last year, but she's not only determined to qualify for the 2028 Games in Los Angeles, USA, but also to achieve a podium finish there.
Yes, I do, and luckily because I were like 2 World Champs, I know how the competition is, and I got that feeling of competing against the people who usually compete at the Paralympics. So yeah, I believe in 2028 when it's in LA, I'm going to be at my best performance, and people can expect me winning a gold.
Biru has previously set national and African records in the events thus far. Vincent Situram, SABC News, Kabeha.
To this now, over 100 people, including activists and students, marched across Johannesburg yesterday calling for justice for a 7-year-old girl raped at her Eastern Cape school. The learner was allegedly molested at the school in Matatiele in October last year while waiting for her transport back home. The perpetrator is yet to be arrested. Lerato Makula has more.
The rape incident of the little girl has sparked widespread outrage and condemnation, including on social media. It is alleged that the school management refused to cooperate with the police during their investigation. And this has led the Eastern Cape Education Department to deregister the Matatiele-based independent school. The perpetrator is yet to be arrested. The Wits University SRC President Nombulelo Qia says government needs to take action and ensure perpetrators face serious consequences.
I don't think the government is doing enough. I think more things should be done when it comes to the issue of gender-based violence, because like I'm speaking to you right now, there's currently a woman who's being raped. Like I'm speaking to you right now, there's currently a child who's being abused or who's being raped, and we're just chilling and want to speak of this thing as if it's a thing that happens once in a while. It happens each and every day, and there's so many cases that get reported. Even those who get reported, there's no one who ever gets to the bottom of it. So it means each and every person who does these things to women and children never face the consequences.
Over 100 marched through Johannesburg to voice their frustration at the escalating cases of abuse, including against minors.
I think men are standing against GBV in South Africa because even if we can look around here, 99% is women. So as men, I think we need to do better into supporting these women to fight GBV.
This should not happen anymore. We can't be tolerating this. We can't always go to TikTok and then we find news on TikTok and only then things happen or the justice systems does a little bit of something. We need to know what is going to happen. We are tired of feeling like this.
Organizations fighting gender-based violence have called for the constitution to be amended in order to deal harshly with perpetrators of GBV.
We don't see any change as long as we don't see the amendment of the Constitution which has all the rights for the perpetrators. Read our Constitution and tell me there's a law that says the victim has a right to XYZ. I've never seen that law. Maybe it's because I'm not a lawyer or I'm not educated, but I've never seen a law that protects a victim.